All right, everyone, welcome back to the Citizens Voice podcast. I am your host, Galadrim, and with me today I have a friend of 1 or 2 years now, something like that. Good friend and known him for a while, especially in the Star Citizen community, for me at least, and that is my good friend Commander Briggs. He
Hello.
runs he runs an org that I was a part of for quite a while called Nightingale Industries, and I'll pass it off to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about how long you've been playing the game, and a little bit about the org.
Hello. Well, I am Commander Briggs. Like you said, I run Nightingale Industries, which is a PMC of Star Citizen. Obviously, I won't go into too much detail because I know we're talking about that later. I myself I've been following Star Citizen for, I would say, since late 2019 probably is when I first saw a video of somebody doing a walkthrough of the Reclaimer, and I was like, what the flip is this ship? This looks insane. And then proceeded to build a gaming PC and started playing, I think, in March of 2020. And then basically kind of played off and on as a solo player for a few months there, and decided I really liked Perseus, and then needed a crew and started an org, and here we are 2 years later. So
I forgot the Perseus is what inspired me. I always think you're a Polaris owner, not Perseus. I don't know why I always confuse the two.
yeah, no, it all started off of the little gunboat.
Yep. Give Tell us a little bit about Nightingale. What's like a general overview? What are you guys about on a very general sense?
Sure. So Nightingale Industries is, as you know, it is a military company. We do a little bit of everything that's legal in the verse. We have obviously the military stuff. Combat is king, but we also have a lot of people who do mining and salvage, and a large group of people who want to do medical gameplay. Whenever they decide to actually make that worth doing again. But yeah, we basically cover everything that's legal. We even have a small group of people who enjoy racing every once in a while. So we do just anything that's legal.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think I will roll us into the first portion of the questions. For all the viewers out there, depending on when you're watching this or not, we are coming hot off of the heels of CitizenCon 2954, which was for me and Breaks here was last week. Depending on when you're watching it might have changed, but
Jeez, it's
um,
already been a week.
I know it's crazy. Um, yeah, 7 days now. Um, and for those who watch CitizenCon, I'm sure can understand that this was a pretty awesome CitizenCon in a lot of ways. And but I think there was also some disappointing parts in there, which we'll get into. So first, I want to ask, what was your favorite part and least favorite part about CitizenCon?
Oh, freaking.
And we'll keep it general. We'll start to break things down as we go in, but like kind of like two quick highlight, quick low light.
I was gonna say, you said, "What's your favorite part?" I'm like, "How long have you got?" Um. Well, I'll say the first one right off. I'll give you two favorites because I think one of them is kind of a gimme. But the Squadron 42 demo was, I have gone back and watched that hour-long clip, I think 4 times now, and it's eaten into my study time, I'll tell you that. But it just, I could watch it over and over and over again. It was so good to actually see what they've been working on and see, like, okay, is why this is why it's taking so long, is because it looks like a freaking movie. Um, in terms of favorite stuff for Star Citizen, oh freak, what do I pick? Um, I think, I mean, obviously the base building and the station stuff and whatnot is super cool in the 1.0 plan, but I think the base building and the manufacturing thing I was very on the fence about. I'm not somebody who typically, like, I've never really played an MMO, not seriously, anyways. I've never actually, fun fact, I've never even been part of an online group like an org. And yet here I am running one that's almost 200 people strong. So don't ask me how I got here, but I got here. But that part I went into very skeptically and very like, okay, are they going to? I was very nervous that the way they would go would ruin the game I love. And I was very pleasantly surprised. I'll admit, when they were first giving it, my reactions were kind of mixed because I was like, I really don't like the way they're taking this. And then the more that the presentation went on, the more I was like, actually, I actually am really loving the way they're taking this, and I take my earlier remarks back, so to speak. So I think that really seeing what the end game vision for or end game vision of the game was probably my favorite part of the things coming to Star Citizen. Because it's launched, I know for our org, it's launched us into discussions about the way our current setup is and how it's going to have to evolve, because the setup we have now only works for the game we have now, but it's not going to work for a game that actually has end game content, you know? In terms of least favorite, um, I don't know. I think for me, the thing that was least favorite wasn't necessarily that I didn't like it. It was more that it just gave me a lot of kind of question marks, and that was like the dress to kill, because the end of the dress to kill was super cool. We got to see, the sandworm.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, when they're like, "Oh yeah, these are the armor archetypes," and blah blah blah, it it still left me kind of going, okay, like, we're gonna have these armor types that have these things and emissions and blah blah blah, but it still left question marks into mix and matching. It left question marks into the fact that we don't have lockers on our ships. So why would I wear a t-shirt and then put armor on if I can't switch my stuff out? Like, is that close? It's not. Nowhere was it discussed. So when am I going to be able to just walk onto my ship and switch my gear out? Or are you developing this whole thing so that I can wear clothes under my armor that I'm never going to use because it's only breathable atmosphere on 4 planets that are in the game currently, um so I think that one had some promise but left me with a lot of questions instead of a lot of answers.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that one. That one was like, at first glance, was like super exciting, and once you kind of had time to sit on it and think about it, you're like, like, kind of like you said, there's a lot of questions coming out of that, and uh, it did. It kind of felt like they were sharing it without the details fleshed out, and it kind of came off that way. And I think it came off that way because that's kind of how it is. My guess is
Yeah.
they are still working on those problems and
Yeah.
questions, and that's why we don't know.
Well, like, the armors looked super cool, and I'm like, oh, it's great that we're getting these new armors. So do any of the armors in the game count as a sniper class armor, or is that the armor that is the sniper class armor? What armors classify as, I don't freaking remember what all the classes were, but it was like you had the heavy and then the tracker, and the tracker looked super cool. Like, I loved a lot of their, like, the ideas behind it. Again, it was just like, why on earth would I use this system and not just wear an undersuit and a helmet? You haven't given me a reason yet other than rule of cool. And rule of cool only takes you so far when I go to do a box delivery mission and I'm dying because I'm not wearing an undersuit. So it was just stuff that they hadn't fleshed out yet, or they gave us just enough information to make it seem cool for the rest of the presentation, but not enough information to see why this was going to be remotely useful or relevant in the game in the long run. Other than just theory crafting, right? Like, just thinking off the top of your head. But I mean, we don't have any dates. They didn't talk about anything, so it's just a bunch of question marks.
Yeah, yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you just said. So I guess that's not a bad segue to kind of start breaking down some of these panels a little bit more and start to get into some of the nitty gritty on what each of the panels showed us. I think in terms of podcast conversation, we'll start off with Brave New Worlds, although I'm guessing there's not going to be a whole lot to talk about there because it was kind of more of just a back end tech showcase. But was there anything there? I think there was kind of the obvious showcase at the end being super cool, visually stunning, and the cool
The
weather stuff. But
storms and yeah.
were there any kind of maybe not obvious things that you liked about that panel?
Um, I mean, honestly, the part about that panel that was kind of disheartening, I guess, is the way they showed off the super cool tech and how we're going to be able to build all these planets. And then later we're like, and we're only going to have 5 systems, and one of them has 2 planets. And it's like, cool. So it was one of those, like, it's a really cool tech demo that shows off what they're doing, and what they're doing looks incredible, don't get me wrong. I mean, when they were showing how condensed they could make forests and how it increased the performance and blah blah blah, I thought that looked super cool. um but when it was just disheartening to see the super cool demo and be like, yeah, these are the things we can generate now with the flick of a switch, but we still can't quite propagate that to a whole planet, so we're only going to be able to get you 5. And I know that there's a whole lot more that goes into that, like they're going to have to make the cities and the landing zones and the points of interest and the station or the bunkers and whatnot, and putting missions in the system. Like, I know that there is a lot more that goes into it, but it was just kind of like, okay, so this system is still in development. It's not just ready to roll out tomorrow. um the One of the things that I did love, though, was the showcase on, like, the NPC nav mesh on planet surfaces. um I think that's something that, I mean, we know how freaking bad NPCs are in the PU as we speak, and that they just barely started to have NPCs spawn outside of bunkers in Stanton. But being able to show off, like, oh yeah, so this is how the AI nav mesh is going to interact, not just with, like, planet surfaces and them figuring out how to walk on planet surfaces, but also, like, they can figure out that an Ursa moving is decent cover, and that as Maelstrom destroys things, they'll be able to see what is and isn't cover. And I thought, yeah, I know CIG just hired, I think more than one. I've seen, I swear, 2 to 3 different people that worked on AI for other big games that I can't remember all the names of. And being able to see how their work already is impacting NPCs is very exciting. Um, it's still some work, I think, for sure. Like, I know in the demo when they were showing the NPCs moving into cover, it was like all of them slide, all of them slide. Like, every time they moved into cover, it was through a big dramatic slide. But that, I thought, was very interesting to see it set up for the future, and see what they can do with that as we move into different planets and different locations, like the Art Core bunker or underground stuff and whatnot.
Yeah, I kind of stole my stuff right out of my mouth there.
Oh,
Um,
sorry.
no, no, that's good. I mean, that's good. I agree. I think the AI nav mesh was also probably one of my, like, quote unquote sleeper favorites of that panel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think a little, well, maybe I'm sure you probably agree to some degree, but I personally liked it because to me it just felt like a, hey, this is an acknowledgement that we're not just going to be fighting AI in buildings for the rest of this game's duration. Like, we are
Mm-hmm.
actively building this tech out because we want to expand this into the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
And
And not just have it set to, like, I mean, they were showing how it interacted with, like, player bases and stuff, and how it's not just going to be
yeah,
like, here's the set settlement that we built in Pyro or in Stanton, those derelict settlements. And it's like, we built these, we designated this, that, and the other. It's something that is very adaptive, so that it creates more generated content where you can have pirates spawn in. And I mean, we already have seen stuff where a Cutlass Black will fly down and drop off pirates to, like, 4 locations that it's scripted to do so, and they always land at the same place. And so if you blow up one Cutlass Black, eventually they're all landing on top of each other and blowing each other up. And this is like, okay, well, now you can see the vision of being able to make this more dynamic, where security forces can show up and they can drop out of a ship and come attack whatever illegal activity that somebody is doing, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it just, it shows that the game's going to be more dynamic instead of like you're saying where it's just, oh yeah, you can only go here because otherwise there's just the NPCs are no go.
Yeah, and I think it has some, even in the building atmosphere. I think it makes sense too, like distribution centers, for example, um, where it's like, okay, obviously there's a lot of cover in distribution centers, and so there's a lot of ways that you can go about attacking it as a player, but as AI, you don't really get that right now because, like, kind of like on a normal bunker or like a ghost hollow or whatever, they just spawn in the same spot, like you said. But now, like, there's a lot of landing pads on a distribution center, so now if they can recognize, like, oh, we can't land at this one, let's move over to this one, and all of a sudden your defense has to shift to a new avenue or whatever. I think it just makes something like a distribution, like defend for 10-minute mission, something that could be really cool in the future. Or like,
Much more interesting than spawn closets.
for sure, I hate spawn closets. They're so annoying.
It feels so realistic to be like defend the bunker and then they're spawning like deep within the bunker.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? How are you getting in here?
What underground bunker did you just come
Yeah,
from?
exactly. How far down does this elevator go, man?
All right, cool. Well, let's move on to the next one. The next one was Brave New Worlds, right? I believe.
No, that was the first one. That's what we were talking about. A social universe.
Oh yeah, right. Social universe. There's a lot to talk about here. I think we're probably gonna get stuck on this one for a little bit. Um, we'll start off with the party tab because I think the org stuff is the exciting part, but we'll touch on the not as exciting stuff first. Party tab. What are your thoughts there? You like it? Wish a little hoping for something different. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, to be honest, when it came to this panel, I know I don't. I said I don't play MMOs. I really don't. But it also was kind of like cool. So we're getting the tools that we should have had, since the beginning, kind of deal. But when it came to the party tab itself and being able to like open a party to the whole verse, I think it's an exciting concept that I hope in the future will be a great tool. I think in the current game, it is also going to be like a pirate's dream. You know what I mean? Like it's going. I mean, I know you have to like you send in an application to join the party or whatnot. But if you're looking for a group of people to go in PvP, you're going to look for the group of 40 people that's just accepting everybody. Throw one person in there, be like, they're all at Daymar, and then boom. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I think it's a really exciting concept, and I'm hoping. I mean, especially when talking about like possibility for org recruitment or being like, hey, we're just going to go and do a salvage night and just see if there's anybody in the server who's interested and be able to be like, hey, if you want to play with us more, like this is our group, blah blah blah. I think there's a lot of possibilities there, and also like I guess this is more to the beacons stuff, but also interesting opportunities to actually have beacons be meaningful again. I just also, like I said, I think that this is something that will become better as the game adapts, but I think early doors it'll take all of 3 minutes until there's other organizations that are going, hold on a minute, we can get a lot of PvP content by just cruising through the party chat or the party list and applying to every single one, seeing which one we get accepted to, and then going and attacking it, you know?
Yeah, actually, that's something I had not even considered until you just said that. But yeah, after you say that, I 100% agree. If they are not careful, that could definitely be a huge problem. I'm curious because I know they're talking about like you can build parties to have like certain parameters and preferences so that like I don't know if they're gonna do this because I don't remember that panel super well, but like maybe having a party be like friends only or something like that, or org only or something like that. Like, so if they implement things like that, maybe you can start to mitigate some of that risk a little bit. But I agree,
it's not gonna be just open join. Like you have to send a request to join the party, and you can open it
Yeah.
or close it. I think what it's really, I think that if this comes in before player reputation comes in, where you can, like, that's one of the things. I guess I'm trying to just stick on the party, but it's going to overlap into the beacons and whatnot
No,
a
you're
little bit.
good. You're good. As long we'll just keep the org specific thing separate, but we can talk about everything else right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah. When it comes to the beacon stuff, I thought that was super fascinating. And like I know you know who I'm talking about, but we have one guy in our org who's done like 250 rescues and med beacons were his life. And then the respawn changes happened and he has seen like 3 beacons since that change. Um and he's super excited for the idea of beacons because he's like it's going to be so much better that oh I'm downed and now you can see who's coming to rescue you and whether you know what I mean, like you have a choice of people and reputation actually begins to matter. I think that would be a very useful counter. Obviously, frankly, PvPers will find a way, right? Like I don't want to just say pirates because not everybody who enjoys PvP is just, you know, oh yeah, we just want to grief everybody into the ground. But people are looking for the content that they enjoy, so people are going to have alt accounts and whatnot. So reputation will be hit and miss, but I think it will help that you'll be able to at least see people who are trying to join the party and see the kind of reputation that they've developed. Based on interactions with players and interactions with guilds within the verse and NPC groups and stuff like that. So I think that that'll will make it all a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more being able to tailor the experience. Yeah, obviously there's still going to be ways to work it around. It's not going to be like this is the magic bullet, but I think that it will change the game, especially for those who are on like I think it'll change the game for those who are on the other side, like on the side of the law, so to speak, that being able to develop more reputation and not just I loved that it wasn't just for like for medical beacons, but it was like, hey, for training, like being able to teach people how to build and how to mine and how to salvage and being able to gain reputation from interactions that way, I thought was something I hadn't really thought of before, but I think is a great idea.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see what comes of that, and it was a tough one for me personally because I was really excited seeing it all, but a thought that wouldn't leave my mind while I was watching it was this looks really cool in theory, but will it be really cool in practice? Like, is this
Hmm.
actually going to be used as much as I think it's going to be
Hmm.
used? Is it not going to? Is the person we won't name who does a ton of medical beacons? I'm sure. It's funny. I actually thought of them too as soon as I heard them talk about medical beacons. Um, uh, I was like, oh, they're gonna really love this. I'm excited for them. And then my immediate afterthought was, I wonder if anyone's gonna use this though. Like, because to me, it still doesn't really give like. For me, I'm not really gonna use a medical beacon. I'm just gonna backspace still because they're still haven't mentioned anything in regards to being punished for just backspacing back to your home spot.
So
And
actually, I did have a thought on that.
okay,
So when it comes to medical beacons, I agree. Like I think the beacons themselves being used is a different issue from the beacons themselves being used when it comes to reputation. I think once it comes to the point where beacons become useful, the reputation will obviously just be baked into that, so everybody's going to use it. I think when it comes to the medical beacons themselves, I know they talked about like, oh yeah, you're not going to want to lose your armor in Death of a Spaceman and da da da. We don't really know what that freaking looks like. They said Star Citizen 1.0 and never brought up what Death of a Spaceman is really. Um, like they kind of touched on it a little bit and kind of gingerly mentioned a few things without committing to anything. But I think one of the things that is really going to change this is if you are a solo player, and with them wanting to when they talked a lot about Death of a Spaceship and this idea that they don't want you to just claim your ships wherever you are and just be like, oh, I'm in this station now, claim. They want you to, they're going to have this whole shuttle thing to bring you back to your ship, and they want calling your ship in. It's going to take time and it's going to take money. And if it's damaged, you should just try and repair it rather than try and claim it. Because if you try and claim it, your ship, you're going to be sitting there on a timer for a while. I think when that makes its way into the game is when you'll start to see players, at least those who don't have like massive fleets of ships just waiting at a station. I think that's when you'll start to see those things start to come in more, and especially with things like loot being more physicalized now. If you have a ship that you've been bunker running in that's loaded up with 4 crates of weapons and armor and knickknacks and doodads, plus your armor racks, plus your suit lockers, and you go down in a bunker, or like especially when they were talking about the exploration stuff with Genesis and having unmarked POIs that are, every 100 kilometers there's just these clusters of unmarked POIs. You're exploring some of those and you got a bunch of loot in your ship and you get injured. Well, you're gonna either have to backspace, go back to a station, and then pray you can find wherever the flip you parked your ship, or pop out a beacon. So I think that will, I think that'll start to see beacons come into effect more. I still think CIG needs to solidify their plans there, though.
Yeah, yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens and kind of see how that develops. Yeah, I think there's a lot of. That was another panel that for me kind of felt like there was a lot of questions that came out of it. Um, but in general, I think it was a panel I was really excited for. And I will use this. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think there was a lot of things that they did that was like, it was one of those panels that was like, okay, it's super cool that we're finally getting all this stuff, but it's not super exciting because it's stuff that most other games that are MMOs have already or some variation of this. I think especially like when they had the whole like friggin' what was it? Like it was like a 10-minute segment on VoIP, VoIP, and VCs within the game. And I'm like, I loved. I guess can I go to the org tools just a little bit here and
Yeah, I was
discuss a
actually
little
gonna
bit?
segue. I was gonna segue into that. So yeah, if you want to start talking about, it, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that when they were talking about like, oh yeah, we can assign this person as a turret gunners and have nested comms within the game. I mean, I know they talked about how they're really they're going to try and stabilize that, but that was one for me that immediately, kind of like what you were saying, where it's like, is anybody going to actually use this? Like, it just feels a little clunky that, like you have Discord where somebody can join the VC as they're logging in and plan out where are you guys, da 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 da. Or you're in a VC in the game and you're using this nested VCs within Star Citizen, and they can only talk to you if they're in that VC. Like, I don't know, it's just something that was like, I know we kind of have it where it's like, oh yeah, you joined Commander Briggs Constellation Andromeda and you can text and speak in that voice chat or that chat, so to speak. But nobody really uses it unless you have somebody in your Discord call who's muted, you know? So I'm very curious to see if that actually becomes the norm, or if it's going to be a lot of work to implement a system that just never gets touched because it's not as effective as the tools that are offered outside of the game.
Yeah, I think my thought there, because I agree to a degree. For me, where I saw the value in something like that was, I think back to my time at Nightingale, and I think about like how we started to discuss things like, oh, having a gilded server, having the Discord, and was it TeamSpeak? Is that what we tried to use?
We have
I
a
think so.
Mumble.
Mumble, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, I saw the value in that being in larger groups. So when you're in there with 20, 30, 40 people, and for
Mhm.
bigger
Mhm.
orgs 50, 60, 100, whatever, I think then it makes sense to leave a Discord and move into a setup like that if it's done well, which it looks like they have at least a good starting point. We'll see what it looks like
Yes,
when
I
it comes
agree.
out, but assuming VoIP works, which it hasn't in the past, so that's saying a lot, but assuming it does, um, I I think it could make sense. But do I think that a party of I'll say like 1 to maybe 7. Are they ever going to use something like that? I'd be shocked.
Yeah, well, and especially if you're just doing like casual gameplay, like I said, like I also think that it's going to depend on the org, right? Like for a group like Nightingale, uh, we might use it. I think, but I think for the bigger orgs, if you're a big org that's doing milsim and heavy milsim kind of stuff, eh, at least most of the ones I've interacted with seem to already have like a TeamSpeak or some alternative that's already got this stuff that's outside of the game. Um,
Yeah.
I did think things like the event calendar in game was kind of cool because you have some players that they don't really check the Discord, but they'll pull up their Moby-Glass and they'll check when they sign in and be like, "Oh shoot, there's an event today," like I thought that there was I thought that there was some interesting things for sure. I really liked um, the whole reputation with guilds thing. The orgs being able to get reputation with groups inside the game, different guilds, I thought was really interesting, except that you could only pick one, if I remember that correctly. It was
Yeah, I
like,
believe
okay,
so.
so then if you're an org like Nightingale, like we were sitting there talking about it and somebody was like, well, just pick the guild that's most like aligned with Nightingale. And I'm like, cool. So the mercenary guild or the transportation guild or you know what I mean? Like which guild? Like we cover all of those aspects.
Yeah.
So either the military side isn't going to get benefits, the transportation side isn't going to get benefits, the industrial side isn't going to get benefits, or you have to create like sub orgs on the R's on Spectrum so that you can have people be in all these orgs and switch which org they're representing, air quotes, so that they can get the benefits. But then you also have to increase your loyalty with all 3 of those or 4 of those or however many of those sub orgs so that you can get the loyalty and get the benefits that you need from those. So I don't know, that whole idea I loved. I love the idea of loyalty and having to rep up your reputation, like your loyalty to your org to get the benefits of the org. I thought was a great idea. But the org only being able to ally with one guild just didn't doesn't mesh or make sense in my head when you have orgs like, I mean, look at something like Test Squadron or Atlas Defense, where you got like thousands of people in this Discord or in this org. Not all of them are only playing one style of gameplay. They're covering everything. So, again, that's one that I was like, cool. That needs iterated still.
Yeah. I I I would be shocked actually if when it goes live if they keep that. Um, I saw that complaint all over Twitter when that first panel like first dropped,
Yeah,
and people
same.
were like, one guild, like how does that make sense? We do too many things, and like what
Yeah.
org only does just one thing? And it's like, are there orgs that do one thing? 100%. Like you think like a med runners or something like that, but uh, I would say I think it's a fair assumption to say that 75% or more do multiple, at least two, if not three, four, five.
Yeah, well,
Um,
it's a game marketed that you can do and play every aspect of the game.
yeah,
So why are we now restricted to only play one unless we just want to do it with no benefits?
yeah, and so I think the way that they're gonna have to look at that is be like, all right, do we either make the rewards from choosing just one so interesting that picking one somehow makes sense, which I don't really see a scenario where that happens, but maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you make the rewards worth nothing to where it's like it's marginal at best depending on what guild you pick, and it's like a 1% here, a 1% there. In a casual gaming experience, you're never gonna notice a 1%.
Hmm.
Or you allow you to pick multiple. Like I think three is not a bad place to be.
I agree. I'd be fine with 3. I think that's totally. I am perfectly willing to be like, oh, but what if I don't get the 4th? Whatever. but I think 3 is fine. I think 1, you're just restricting an org way too much for what the original vision was. Obviously, cool, you can still play all those gameplay loops, but it makes no sense that I can do all these gameplay loops for these other companies and just like not get any credit or recognition for it, you know?
Yeah.
Or at least the org can't. Like, oh, there's a bunch of people from Nightingale who are mining and taking up all these salvage contracts. Oh, there's also a bunch of these people from Nightingale who are hauling this stuff. Oh no, we don't care about them.
Yeah. So I am pulling up the guild, the like 1.0 guild mission thing, because I'm just kind of
Yeah.
curious. So on this, it looks like there's 6, at least in like a general like your science, industrial, security, criminal, racing, and cargo. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, if they stick with that and you can align with like one of those 6, all right, you pick half. Okay, that's cool. And if that's not
Yeah.
how they do it, maybe they break it down and it's a little bit more specific. So it's not just like the cargo guild. Maybe they do something more specific. Okay, maybe you start to like quote unquote min max your org a little bit, and you can do that a little bit. But I think I don't see a scenario where 1 makes sense or goes live. I think they
Well,
have to change.
yeah, and you've also got these interesting scenarios where, like, again, you've got the mercenary guilds, you've got your combat stuff, you've got the transport guilds, you've got your hauling stuff, and your recovery export experts. I'm assuming that's repair. Your resource workers, which is also repair and engineering and fueling and salvaging and mining and building, and your refining and your crafters. But then if you go to the Academy of Science, you've got your carfters. I thought that was hilarious. We were dying about that. If you look under the Academy of Science tab, crafter is carfter. But like you've got, but then you've got hunter, farmer, crafter, search and rescue, and so it's like, okay, so again, like if you're doing medical stuff, if you are if you're doing fabrication, I'm assuming crafting under science is like making weapons and armor and stuff like that. I'm assuming maybe they're also talking about like crafting, I don't know, other things that we don't know about yet. But it's just, again, it's just very, I think, for example, the Imperial Sports Federation is going to be a very select, like I know, like for example, Anzia Racing, um, that'll be a group that will 100% want to level up their reputation with that guild, because that's what they do. That's their org, right? Like that's it's the racing group. Um, and then if they have others, then they can take those. But I don't think you need to be able to level up with all 6. But I just think restricting it to 1 just makes no sense.
Yeah. Um, all right. Well, for the sake of time, I think we will move
Yeah, I can
on a little bit.
stop beating a dead horse.
Um, so what do we'll stick with the org panel section still, but do you think Nightingale will utilize that new org
Oh,
app?
100%.
Do you think you're going to use
100%.
it a lot, or do you think you're going to still do a lot of things on Discord? Are you going to try to like move a lot of it onto the app when it comes out? What are your thoughts there?
The way I would look at what they're talking about, if I, in all honesty, of the tools they've come up with, is an additional tool to be used like hand in hand with the Discord. Frankly, if I have to log on and join and boot up Star Citizen to be able to open up my calendar and see what events are happening, I'm just going to miss all the events. I mean, I'm a full time university student in law school who's married and blah blah blah. Like, I don't necessarily, I don't have time to just boot up Star Citizen constantly so that I can manage the org within the game. But I can do that stuff on Discord relatively quick and easy. I can post events and all that kind of stuff. But I think we'll definitely be using the org tools that are in the game for the players' sake, and we'll have officers who can post the events to the calendar and see applications to the org through the Mobiglass app and whatnot. And like we will 100% be using the org tools, but this won't be replacing the tools we already have. It'll just be used in conjunction with what we already have.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how every org kind of handles that page. Because I think a lot of orgs are going to be in a similar boat. People have lives; they don't aren't something I think that would be really cool, and maybe a really cool addition. Maybe this comes out at 1.0, maybe it doesn't, maybe it never comes. I don't know, but like, um, I don't know if you ever played Battlefield 4 back in the day, but they had um, Battlefield 4 had a companion app that you could launch with it, and on the app you could handle a lot of like your clan information, and that went directly into the game. Like it was a linked all as like a part of the thing, and it was a companion application that tied directly in. It wasn't some third party thing. It was directly from the company, and it was really cool. And you also had some gameplay things, like you could become like a commander and do some things on the battlefield, whatever. But if Star Citizen did something like that, where they launched like an app on the iOS store or the Google store or whatever, and its only focus was org management, that would be pretty awesome. Now, will they do that? Who knows? But I do think it would be a really cool addition, because I think for the org tab, as well as some of the other things in this panel, a lot of it felt like a, hey, we're doing this, kind of like you said, like an MMO. It should have had it already, but at the same time, it was one of those things where it's like, you're still not giving me enough of an incentive, at least for me personally, to move myself off of Discord. Like, to me, Discord still is going to be the predominant usage, and
Yeah, I would rather a webhook for Discord to Spectrum
yeah,
than
exactly.
than just only being able to use Spectrum slash. I mean, I was just pulling up because when you make an org, you also get like a Spectrum page, and I'm pulling up the Nightingale one as we speak here because it's like, cool, let's go to the Nightingale Spectrum, and you have a forum on Spectrum. Um, we have a total of 3 threads that were basically all started for like, they were all started early in, like, as memes to be like, hey, I posted something on the Spectrum, haha, because nobody uses the Spectrum.
Yeah.
It's so clunky. It's so just completely inferior to the tools that are already available to you through things like Discord. So even if they do add all this stuff to the game, again, why would I use it over the exterior tools? So I'm gonna have to see what they do with that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Do you think if they launched an app, kind of like I suggested, do you think that's something, would that be enough of an incentive for you to move more over? Or do you still think you'd be like, nah, I would still just use Discord?
I would still just use Discord, frankly. Like, app is cool. It's a cool idea. I'd still just use Discord though. I mean, it's to be frank, at this point, this is where the org has been for so long that trying to transition everyone into using something else, the amount of people you would lose falling through the cracks
Yeah.
is through the roof. So again, it's a tool that we plan on using with what we have, not to replace what we have.
Yeah. I remember when we tried to get everyone to move over to Gilded. That was comical.
well, well, the whole idea wasn't to get everybody to move over to Gilded. It was simply just to use it so you could be in 2 VCs at once. And yeah, that was used by like 4 people, and then never used again.
Yeah, it was funny. All right. Well, for the sake of keeping things moving, I think we will skip the dress to kill panel.
Yeah, we already discussed.
Yeah, we kind of already touched on it. I don't think there's a whole lot more there.
The only thing I could add to that is the fact that there's a sandworm that's in engine that they had gameplay of actually fighting was hugely exciting.
Yeah, that was cool when Zach came
Yeah,
on stage. He had said something
it's
before, like on Twitter, like, "Oh, like I'm not joking. What I'm about to show off is like really cool," or something along those lines. I'm not
yeah, yeah,
quoting him,
yeah.
but I was like, all right, Zach, I'm curious to see what you're gonna cook up, and that was not what I was expecting, and it was super super
No,
cool.
yeah, it was when I was the whole part about the fauna. It was really funny that it was dressed to kill, and it was only dressed to kill for maybe half of it. And it's like,
Yeah,
what are they killing? Massive creatures. And I was like, absolutely, unequivocally, yes. Like,
yeah,
sign me the frick up.
yeah. It was super cool and exciting. I'm super excited to see that in game and to see how it expands too. Because when they showed off that little like, uh, I know there's like an actual term for it, but I don't know what it is. But that like blueprint page almost, or like sketches of all the animals that are going to be
Yeah, like
coming in.
concept list or
I was
whatever.
like, oh my god, there's so many cool looking ones on there, and if
I I
it's
I
going to be
gotta say
awesome.
that. Oh yeah, super exciting, and seeing a bunch of them, like the giant space crab that I can't remember the name of now, that has been talked about forever. But I got it, like there was things like the friggin' cave Valacar that was like straight out of nightmares. That thing was terrible. I was in a VC with a bunch of org mates watching. It was like, okay, Briggs is officially never entering a cave again.
Yeah.
It's like that thing's gonna pop out of the ground, and I will never emotionally recover.
Yeah, it was that one was terrifying. Honestly, I love the look of both of them. They both were cool looking. The like alligator looking version
Yeah,
was super cool too.
yeah, 100%.
So we will move on to Beyond Pyro, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Actually, before we start, which panel was it where they showed the different biomes? Was that the first one?
That was the very first one when they talked
Okay,
about
I'm gonna make
like
a
the
quick note on
swamp and the
that.
jungle.
I love those. Very.
Yes, I
That's all I'm
agree.
gonna say. I thought
They
those looked
looked
amazing.
they looked really good, and the fact that they could generate it so that like the logs moved in the water kind of thing was just so cool to see. Like
Yeah, yeah, it was
endless
super cool.
possibilities.
Did you have a favorite of the biomes that they showed? It was redwood, swamp, and jungle, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in real life, the only one I would ever go to is the redwood. But I think the redwood one was super cool. I really liked the jungle. I mean, I liked them all. I was my head was going wild with the possibilities of what you could do with like a frozen planet that had a swamp that has a swamp on it, but it's a swamp that's frozen.
Yeah,
And stuff like that, like being able to take those biomes and make different planets and mash it all together and see how it turns out, I think is going to be fascinating.
yeah, it was super cool. I'm super super duper excited to see those come into game.
I
Swamp was
just want to see
personally
a
my favorite. It looked the best to me. I thought they all
yeah.
looked amazing, but the redwood looked a little bit too much like
Redwood just looks same like what we already have, just bigger.
yeah, and they did show off like how big some of the trees are gonna be, so maybe that'll be cool. But it was kind of hard to visualize that because they didn't really show it like an
Hmm.
in-game comparison. They just kind of showed that like gray box or white box version, so it was a little
Hmm.
hard to tell. Maybe it'll be cooler in game, but a swamp to me was my favorite. But getting
Yeah.
back on track, Beyond Pyro, a lot to talk about there. I think.
Hmm.
Was the Nyx system reveal surprising to you?
I mean, could have seen that coming from miles away. Hey, we had a landing zone in this other system in the game at one point. I wonder what the next system is going to be.
You're in the shower, right?
Well,
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, some background noise here.
we'll edit that out in post.
Yeah, exactly. Um, uh, what
So
about
yeah, Nick.
Castra?
Okay, so I will say, so just going off of kind of the whole presentation, quick overview when it comes to Nyx. Nyx could see coming a mile away. I wasn't in the game, obviously, when Levski was a thing.
Yeah, me neither.
So I'd seen like YouTube videos of it, of people in Levski and whatnot. And obviously, they used it to be like, hey, here's the Polaris. And that super cheap shot of the Kraken coming out of the
Yeah.
borehole. Like, that was 100% marketing right there. Like, hey, look, there's the Kraken, and everybody went, and it's like, no, don't get your hopes up, guys. Like, it's not coming. They're not working on it. That is 100% for hype.
Yep.
Um, But I really loved a lot of what they showed there. I think Levski looks great. They didn't really go into detail about the planets of Levski. They just were, or Levski, Nyx. They just were like, oh yeah, Levski is in an asteroid. But then, when they showed the 1.0 thing, and it's like, oh yeah, Nyx has a bunch of planets they just didn't talk about.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, again, I thought Nyx was really exciting. I think it's going to be really great just to have another system because I think Pyro is cool and all, but I think as we get more systems, it's going to Pyro. I would rather get more systems quicker than have Pyro become really stale really fast. And Nyx looks to be a little bit of a middle ground between Pyro's absolute lack of infrastructure and Stanton's well-established infrastructure. Nyx kind of seems to be a bit in the middle. And I loved, like the side freight elevators for the Hull series and blah blah blah. And then they went into the ArcCorp municipal zones, which cool. You'll be able to do stuff on ArcCorp now. I loved Castor. I mean, obviously, everybody's like Castor's going to be my new home. I think Sherman looks fantastic. Absolutely knocked out of the park. Obviously, it's still gray box. I think it's a very dressed up, look as good as you can gray box, but I think it looks fantastic. I'm really excited to see like the massive guns of Sherman and the like Messer regime architecture. I think I'm really pumped to see what that looks like in game and see what other systems get that kind of architecture. And I also really liked how Sherman seems to me, from what they were showing again in the gray box, but it seems to me to be a place they're trying to make feel a little bit more like a city, like with that military base that's now housing and whatnot. And they have roads with Ursas and STVs driving around all the houses and whatnot. I'm like, that is super cool to me because that's been one of my complaints about landing zones in Star Citizen is that it's a city that you can only go between A, B, and C using the tram system.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
it makes sense in places like I mean, it makes sense in Microtech to an extent because it's super cold, be inside. Crusader, it's flying platforms, okay. Loreville, I mean, you can walk around a big section of Loreville, but I just, there's not a city that feels like a city. It all feels just a little bit too much like the cities in Star Citizen look incredible, but feel almost like cities do in Bethesda games, where you have to kind of stick within this tiny little generated area. So, yes, it's a big city, but it feels pretty small and isolated.
Yeah, I agree. I personally really hope they don't utilize the tram system on Sherman, and
Mm.
I hope that they do kind of um like the spawn closet thing they do for like Ursas on like when you break out of prison, for example, you have to like enter that code and it like unlocks one of the garages that has an Ursa in it. Like I hope they use that kind of a method for transportation for Sherman, and then
Mm-hmm.
they just build a road network. Like I've seen them devs be like, "Oh, roads are actually a lot more difficult than you think
I mean,
for
they
like
definitely are.
building a
I mean,
planet." But in a
yeah.
city, it's just part of the architecture. So just design it with roads in place, and then it's really just like some texturing. And
I think the difficult part is, have you driven a vehicle in Star Citizen lately?
yeah, it's brutal,
they
horrendous.
hand they are absolutely awful. And so I think that is the more difficult part. I don't think it's like I think they can plonk down a road and it's like cool, road is done. Boom. Nobody's going to be able to freaking drive on it though because driving in a straight line is nigh on impossible.
Yeah.
And there's no speed control in vehicles, so you're either pedal to the metal or nothing, or you're just sitting there tapping your W key over and over and over again so that you can just inch forward. But it's so I think that the roads part is more of an issue of like vehicles than I mean even games like I love Cyberpunk 2077 and even driving the vehicles in that game can get a little wonky sometimes. Um, so I think that would be their biggest issue is getting the ground vehicles to the point where you can actually use them reliably as transportation. But I agree. I think it also gives you a ton of possibilities. Sorry, tangent, but it also gives you a ton of possibilities with, for example, systems like Farron. Um, I love the Farron system. It's got a lot of great lore, but the whole point is that part of the lore is that the big city on Farron, Tram, used to be this megapolis, like massive city, and now it's like a really shuttered in. There's only like the core of the city is safe. The rest of it's overrun with gangs and stuff. That's gonna feel so meh if you show up to Tram and you land in the landing zone and you just take the subway to the rough district
Yeah.
instead of like, hey, this is the border of the safe area, and if you go outside of the safe zone, you're gonna get screwed. So being able to take like a bunch of guys, like get your buddies together, hop into a Spartan and drive through the city instead of just like take the tram to the hood and be like, oh no, we're in the rough zone, and now you're on guard, but you took the subway to get there. That wouldn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. That would be super cool. I regret not learning more about Star Citizen lore because, like, when they announced Castro, I was like, oh, I've never even heard of that system. That sounds super cool. um,
I
uh,
did know about the Castra system, but
um, but yeah, I think utilizing roads to some degree, or maybe not even roads, but I would just love for Sherman to utilize vehicles and like we've all bought these vehicles. Let's get some use out of them. I know they kind of wanted that with like distribution centers, but like that just doesn't happen. um, it very rarely is needed. Um, but yeah, I'm excited too. I think Castro and Sherman, although even not even Sherman. I thought Castro just as the um like that little like demo video where they showed the
oh yeah, the
cyclone like
mountains,
driving in the mountains, like that was stunning.
beautiful. Yeah.
I I can't wait when you're driving around on Castra and we have base building out and you just like look on all these mountaintops and you just see all these bases like all over the place. It's gonna be so freaking cool to see. Um, and like those cliffs, they just look super good. So I'm super excited for that system. And that was only Castro's what 3 planets? I think 4,
Two.
2. Okay,
It's got the one planet that is basically it's like acid rain was used as target practice for the Navy and
that's
like
right.
weapons
Yep.
testing, and then there's Castra, or I think that planet's actually Castra. I have to double check now.
I think because there's Castro 1 and then Castro 2, which like had a nickname like Capscom or something like that.
Yes,
Um,
Cascom is where Sherman is.
yeah.
Castra 1 is the basically the bombing runs. That was the one that was nicknamed Bullseye.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So I'm curious to see what'll happen. And with Nyx too, I thought Levski looked amazing. Um, Delamar, I think, was kind of the same thing to a degree, but thought it looked solid. I was a little bummed that they didn't show some of the planets. I thought that would have been a really cool segue from like, oh hey, here's this cool planet tech we've been showing off. Oh, and at the end of the day, look at these cool planets we actually built with this planet tech. And it would have been cool if they'd been like, hey, here are these planets, and guess how fast we did them. We did these planets in, I don't know, I'm gonna make up a number, 1 month instead of Pyro 3, which took us 6 months or whatever. I don't know the actual numbers, but it would have been cool if they had showed us kind of the fruits of their labor to like a real practical sense, but unfortunately they did not. But yeah, it'll be cool to see. And then so I guess that leads us to the end of day one, which was Squadron 42.
Yes.
I know we touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but first question is 2026 reveal big quotes, air quotes, release window. What do you thought? Realistic? Do you think it's gonna drop in 2026? Do you think that was some more marketing BS? What are your thoughts there?
If 2026 was marketing BS,
If 2026 is realistic, do you think that they intentionally didn't say 2025 and said 2026 because they do truly believe it's going to come out in 2026, or do you think like what do you think happened there?
first off, I will say I I didn't really care about the 2026 release as much as a lot of people did online. I think obviously, like, yeah, you had this really epic demo, and then it says 2026, and it kind of takes the wind out of your sails. And then it was just sort of the end, like, boom, end of day one. And it was like, oh, well, that left me with a bit of a disappointed taste because they hyped it up like you don't want to miss and da 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 da. And like I get it. It sounded like it was going to be 2025, but also the demo crashed twice and had a bunch of screen tearing, and one character's face kept glitching back and forth between two character models during a cutscene. Like it was, I think that honestly worked in their favor in a lot of ways. From going from instead of being like, oh my gosh, this game looks incredible, why isn't it out already? If that's just what the prologue is, we have no idea what the rest of the 40 plus hours of gameplay are. But I think if they're already like, oh yeah, it's 40 plus hours of gameplay, then I think the game is pretty well defined. And from what I can get from the monthly reports and from that, I think they are genuinely just polishing. I've seen a bunch of people being like, oh, they're not in polishing, they're still developing. It's not actually feature complete. And I'm like, no, I genuinely think that they are moving forward, and that they're just on the polishing and buffing out all the hitches. And we saw them. Like there was no magic. We didn't watch a YouTube video. We watched it crash live twice during the demo. So obviously there's still some work that needs to be done. And I would rather them let the sucker cook and come out when it is done and polished, because frankly after so long they cannot afford a flop. If the game comes out and it crashes every 30 minutes of gameplay, they will never, I don't think they'd ever financially recover, to be frank. I think this has to be, I don't think it has to be a home run game of the year smash out of the park. I mean, I think it's going to be an incredible game that a lot of space gamers are going to eat up, but it has to at least be a commercial success. It has to be something that CIG can put a stamp on and be like, the development was worth it. Look at what we came out with, and it's only getting better from here. Instead of being like, look at what we worked on for 14 years and it flopped on release, and now we're ruined, right? Like, it really is make or break. And uh, frankly, I think because of that, there is one big overarching reason why they're pushing it to 2026. And that big reason is GTA 6.
Really? That is a take I have not heard yet, so I want you to expand on that.
Well, first off, GTA 6 is announced to be coming out in 2025.
Yep.
And it's supposed to be releasing late in 2025. You already know Chris Roberts wants to get on stage and announce the release date for for Squadron 42 and make it for him. He wants the big show. I mean, and I don't blame him. It's his baby. But if you have a game that you have been working on for 14 years by the time it's, 2026 or whatever, I think that's if my math is right. If you have a game that you've been working on that is going to dictate the future of your company and it is legitimately make or break, do you want that game competing with the most anticipated game of all time?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And frankly,
I
the
would.
other thing, well, yeah, and I think the other thing too is, I would say there's more, like, games get pushed back a lot, so they're announcing late 2025. That's a pretty flexible window that could also go into early 2026. So you have this kind of amalgam, this big most anticipated game of all time made by Rockstar, which is pun intended a rock star at making video games. Like, their games are always out of the park smashes. If this game is going to release sometime Q3, Q4 2025, might get pushed back to Q1, Q2 2026. If Squadron 42 releases in that window, it's a guaranteed commercial failure, because nobody is going to be torn away from Grand Theft Auto to go play the game that's been made fun of for 14 years.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I I think that there definitely could be some merit to that. The only thing that I would maybe question about that theory is I think in this world that we live in now with social media and like attention spans and stuff, you see like a smashing hit come out like I think back to Ghost of Tsushima a lot because
Yeah.
like that game was insane, broke a ton of records, fantastic game. But in terms of like social media and stuff, you didn't really see it much more than like a month or two, and it very quickly started to fade out of the kind of the mainstream audience and
Hmm.
stuff. Now GTA, I think because it's a multiplayer game, will be in the limelight a
And
lot
because it's
more.
GTA.
Yeah, and it's GTA, so I wouldn't be surprised if you see, well, like even GTA 5 is still like one of the most streamed games even today, but even though it's still like one of the most streamed games, it's still not like in your face mainstream, I would say. So I'm
Hmm.
curious. I 100% think that they probably had that conversation. Is that why they actually did or not? I guess we'll probably never know, but I do love the theory.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm yeah, and I'm not saying that's the only one. Again, I still think it needs time to cook and it needs time in the oven.
yeah,
But I think they're using their. I would say they're going to use that window of it needs some time to cook, and by the time it's ready to cook, it's going to be right during this window. So if we set expectations for 2026, we can now release it any time in 2026. So if GTA 5 launches in November of 2025, then I would not be shocked with an early 2026 Squadron 42. But if it launches in December or January for GTA 6, then I think they're going to, because you want to get time that GTA 6 is going to release. Again, this is all I I think
we're
the
theory
thing that
crafting.
I mean, obviously, I'm not in CIG, but if if I was analyzing market trends, and as somebody like I mean, I went to business school and before I got into law school, and if I was to be giving advice to a company, I would 100% be saying, yeah, you don't want to go up against them. That's a losing fight. Like there's too much hype, there's too much expectation. That game is going to come out. People are going to put months of time into that game just because it's so anticipated. So just let it cook, set expectations, make it just 2026 anytime in that 12-month span. Could be at the end, could be at the beginning. We don't know. But it's going to be after this and after it's had time to cook and after it's had time to kind of work its way out of okay, the hype is now kind of worn off. People are enjoying the game and now something new coming out will be able to get the attention that it deserves. Instead of being like I mean like I look at a game like Titanfall 2 that I can't remember what the two games were that it released next to, but it released kind of in a window when two other massive games dropped, and it was a commercial failure, and they never developed a
Wasn't
third
it Red Dead?
Titanfall. Oh, it might
I
have
feel
been.
like it was Red Dead. I know those both came out like right around the same time. I don't know exactly the release windows, but they were around the same time. I kind of feel like it
Oh
was.
no, it launched. It launched between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare.
That's oh yeah, that's right. Two mega giants in the shooter
Yeah,
space.
and Battlefield 1 obviously went on to become huge.
Yeah,
And Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, I mean, it was never as huge, but it was still, I mean, it was still a decently big game
and it's Call
and
of
made
Duty.
again, yeah, like it's two juggernauts and then Titanfall 2 releases and it's a commercial failure. And frankly, I prefer Titanfall 2 to both of those games.
Yeah, that was a
But
great game.
because of its release window, it failed.
Yeah.
So,
So I have a hot take, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. My hot take regarding the 2026 is that, and this is a hot take. I can't wait to see the comments after this take. Um,
oh boy.
hot take is that they are going to shoot for a quarter 4 2026 release, and that is because quarter 1 of 2027 or maybe quarter 2 is when they're going to try to do Star Citizen 1.0.
Oh, absolutely not a chance.
Super mega hot take. Now,
Oh
here's my
boy,
theory, or here's my thoughts here. Because I was digging into this a little bit, because I saw someone else mention it, and I was like, okay, I want to dig into this a little bit. So I forget which dev said it, so if someone knows that's listening and wants to link the post or give the name in the comments, go ahead. It was someone higher up in the devs. I don't think it was Rich Tyre, but it was one of those kind of like senior guys was saying that they wanted Squadron to come out somewhat close to the full release of Star Citizen because they kind of want just it was like a nice wrap up for the company. They didn't want to like finish one and then still have like another decade for their other one to go. They kind of wanted them to be in the somewhat the same ballpark. And when I think like when you announce a game as feature complete a year ago, you're telling me you need 3 years to polish? I mean, there are some AAA games that are developed from scratch in 3 years, and you need 3 years to polish. Like that to me, it just doesn't make sense. And when I reached out to some of my game developer friends, now none of them are working on AAA games like Star Citizen, but they understand game dev from a technical perspective. A lot of them were saying like it doesn't seem to make sense that you would need 3 years to polish. So there's got to be some ulterior motive. Now I like your idea about GTA. Maybe it's from a marketing standpoint. Like maybe the game will be ready by end of 2025, and they're just gonna sit on it because from a marketing standpoint they just wanted to release in a good window. Or maybe it's because there's some connection with Star Citizen and they want it to kind of be the marketing to kind of be together. Like, hey, we're releasing Squadron end of 2026. Star Citizen 1.0 is coming out 6 months later or something like that. At least that's their target. Super hot take, but with all the tools and the speed of development, and with Squadron kind of finishing, and we're going to keep seeing this transition over to more and more devs going over to Star Citizen, I do think we're going to see a pretty quick uptick in development. And I think we're already seeing it to a degree. And I don't know, just the way the whole CitizenCon went, it felt like they're like base building, which we'll touch on a little bit, but base building looked a lot more developed than I thought it was going to be at this stage. And I don't know, it feels like things are moving a lot quicker than we realize as like outsiders looking in. So yeah, that's the biggest hot take I will make this entire podcast. But I'm curious. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, oh dang, that's
It's a hot one.
I think that there's way, I mean, I think there's way too much work that needs to be done to actually reach that goal. I mean, to be able to get it done 2027, we're talking 2 years to be able to get base building, stations, crafting capital ships, 5 other systems, another main story specifically for Star Citizen, all the guilds and reputation and org tools, plus all the stuff they haven't even talked about yet. I think, I mean, could be, but I think that's a pretty lofty goal.
Yeah, and it very well could be. Who knows? But I was like, I mean, one of the senior guys did say it. That they wanted them to be kind of close together. Who knows? Maybe it's end of 2027. Maybe it's 2028. Who knows? Total shot in the dark. But
I also think that, I mean, I agree. Like they want them to be close together. I also think that I also think if they're a few years apart, that would be close enough together. I don't think they need to be boom, boom, back to back because, frankly, there's been so much put into Squadron 42 that they need the time to cook and be done with Squadron 42 and properly develop Star Citizen.
Yeah. I was watching a YouTube video too, and I apologize to the YouTuber. I don't remember who said it, but someone was saying, to kind of go off of my theory too, was that like, and this is an even hotter one. I don't really agree with this, but this person was saying something along the lines of like, oh, they actually want Star Citizen 1.0 to come out before Squadron because now I don't think this is going to happen, but they were saying they wanted to come out before Squadron because they want Odin to come into Star Citizen, but they don't want to showcase Odin in any capacity until after Squadron comes out. And so now that we've seen what 1.0 Star Citizen looks like, and Odin's not in that mix, but we know that they've kind of built Odin out for Squadron, then like, does that mean, are we getting that as an expansion? Is there any correlation between Squadron with Odin? Who knows?
Well,
But just kind of an interesting theory.
I also think that the Odin that they have built is the Odin for Squadron 42, and Squadron 42 takes place well before Star Citizen.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the system is going to stay the same, but I think they still have to do a lot of work in getting Odin um, up to the Star Citizen level.
Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think next CitizenCon will be really fascinating from a progress standpoint, even if they don't deliver hardly anything from this year, which I honestly think is a possibility because given the lack of dates and things that they shared. I'm really curious to see the progress updates to kind of get a feel like, okay, are we actually moving faster? Are we not moving faster? Kind of, you keep showing us all this really cool tech with the purpose of speeding up development, but we're not really seeing it yet. Like, what's going on there? So I'm really curious next year to see where we stand on a lot of this stuff. But all right, well, we are moving a little bit slower than I liked. Not a problem, but if you still have time, I think we'll touch on base building a little bit if you still have time. I don't want to keep you.
No, I've got as much time as you would like.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really have anything else going on. I mean, I have studying going on tonight, so
Okay. Cool.
Not pressing.
So base building. I don't think we'll go into it too much because I do think it's super far out there. But what are some initial thoughts on it?
I mean, obviously super exciting, right? Like,
yeah.
I think it's super exciting to again have a goal that we're actually working towards. I think being able to log in every day and know, okay, this is what we're trying to do. I think having it in conjunction with crafting is super exciting. Again, I wasn't super sold at first, until because at first I thought it was, oh, I have a P4, I built my P4, I didn't have all the materials, and I was just screwed. But the ability to upgrade your weapons instead of just, oh, you built the gun and it's just sticking there. I think that's a huge thing. I love it for so many reasons. I also love how it's going to facilitate orgs working together. I know your last guest was Deputy, and Vertinen and Intergalactic, which is their org, Nightingale Industries, and then another org, which is 12th Battle Group. We are all working together in an alliance that we actually had, in place before all this was announced, or at least we're still in the process of ironing all that out, but that's the goal. And discussing how we're going to be able to work together as organizations and actually be able to play to our strengths, or you have Vertanen that specializes in like cargo hauling, and Nightingale that does a little bit of everything, but it has a big industrial and combat focus, and then 12th, which has a huge combat focus, and being able to have all those groups work together to each other's strengths to be able to build bases together. I thought that was one thing with the org tools, is being able to set orgs as allies and potentially give them permissions within your bases and stuff is going to be huge, because you can build big compounds where you have orgs that have build permissions within your land claim, so to speak, and you're able to work together and build bases together where you might not have enough people with just your org to build up to a station, but being able to do it with other orgs is going to be super super exciting. I love just the possibilities, right? Like, it was one of those things that when originally it was just the Pioneer that was going to be able to build buildings, and so if you didn't have one, well, you were just going to be kind of SOL. And now we're sitting here going, oh wow, like the amount of stuff that you're going to be able to do, and just being able to like take a Zeus, fly out to the middle of nowhere and pop down a quick cab it's going to open up the game so much. I think they still have a lot of things to answer. Like, if I put all my materials into building a hab and building a generator, and somebody flies over while I'm offline and decides to just drop a Moab on it because they talked about, destroying bases, and I'm like, that is going to be very, very frustrating if you're a small org that doesn't have around the clock security and you're just offline and you come back in and somebody's just carpet bombed your base into oblivion. And you can be like, oh, well, then you should put up shields and go and do this whole shield thing that I didn't understand at all and get the planetary shield and whatnot. I mean, Nightingale could put every single person we have on
And you'll
and go
still
up
lose it.
against. Yeah, like if we're gonna go up against like a super, or like if you got orgs like like Avenger Squadron or Pax Mortis or
Test.
Test. Well, I mean, Test is, they've got so many people, they might not be super organized, but like if Nightingale's going to go up against any of those organizations that are a little bit more organized or just completely dwarf us in size, we can do everything we want. Our bases are just going to get carpet bombed again and again and again. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm interested to see what the Maelstrom system looks like. But also, it's really going to suck if you're a small org that is just at the mercy of every other organization in the game that's remotely bigger than you.
Drop some Moab that costs like 8,000 AUC to restock.
Yeah. Well, again, but like if you have a Moab that costs 8,000 UEC, but you're in an org with 1,200 people in it,
Yeah.
it's not hard to get a quick loan, like I know in Nightingale we got guys who they literally sign on and do nothing. We had one guy who, until the org got together and gifted him a vulture, he had an Aurora LN, and he would go every single patch from an Aurora LN to a prospector, and from the prospector he would just get everything because I mean, I tip my hat to him. If you're listening, you know who you are. You might say you're infamous in our org, but he is like just incredible, and absolutely wish that I could generate the money he does and have the patience to generate the money he does. But he's got millions when I'm sitting there with a couple 100,000,
Yeah.
So if I drop a Moab and you've got one or two people in there who just mining and salvaging and industrial gameplay is their whole shtick, who cares? They're a dime a dozen. I mean, yeah. So it's gonna be interesting to see what they do. Again, like I'm super excited for the possibilities. I think it's gonna be super interesting, but I think the biggest thing is just going to be making it so that, especially when you only have 5-star systems, when you're getting to the point where all of those are playing in like one shard, if you're on North America or however that works, like if you get to that point, the keeping it so that you don't just have, I think you just, it's going to be tough to make sure it doesn't just become a mega corporations just bulldoze and bomb everybody into oblivion until they're all just assimilated into this organization.
Yeah.
And then the smaller orgs are like, well, we can't even build bases because if they get discovered, then you're just going to have to deal with getting bombed. And like, I know PvPers will be like, we'll get better at PvPing. And it's like, frankly, you're not going to, the smaller orgs aren't going to have the numbers, the people, and the people online all the time to be able to do that. Right. Like,
Yeah.
anyway, that's a
I
whole.
Yeah. On that a little bit, your org, my little small org, our mutual friend Deputy, and lots of others are part of a. I won't name them, but I think you know who I'm talking about. Alliance Discord or
The
group.
affiliation group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever you want, whatever you want to call that. And there was a lot of discussion in there that I started, and then it kind of turned into a lot of people tuning in, which is awesome. About small orgs and base building in particular, and something that a theme that very quickly popped up was small orgs being kind of like what you were just saying, like can small orgs even function in a base building environment in an
Mm-hmm.
MMO type game like this. I don't. Have you ever played a game like DayZ or Rust or any of those like games that
I
do
have
base
not.
building today?
No.
Okay,
Literally, Star Citizen's the only kind of online game that I play like this.
it's chaos.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
warfare. It's ugly. It's tremendously frustrating, but also tremendously satisfying at the same time. So I played Rust. I played DayZ. I'm actually on a DayZ kick right now, and like literally last week, I'm playing DayZ with a couple friends. We build up this nice base. Well, nice for us at least. We log off for literally 30 minutes. We come back. The entire base was destroyed. Hours of work just poof vanished.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we took steps and measures to like extra fortify our base and do all these extra things, and didn't matter. Literally 30 minutes is all it took, and we logged back on within 30 minutes. See all this. We then spent another couple hours rebuilding everything. Log back off. Come back 4 hours later. All gone again. So I mean, we spent 10 hours and got nowhere. It was just
Mm-hmm.
almost worse than nowhere. We were worse off than we started, and so I'm super curious to see how it plays out in Star Citizen. I think it'll be really fascinating to see how they do the high sec, low sec system breakout that they
Mm-hmm.
keep talking about. I think the tax structure will be really interesting, how expensive it is to be in a high sec area. And for those listeners that might not know what I'm talking about, CIG was talking about some systems like Stanton, for example, have being a high security or high sec, whatever you want to call it, system where you can basically pay the UEE to basically claim a piece of land, and then the system provides you with security. Now, I don't know if they've ever talked about if that prevents you from also building your own security. I'm not sure if they've said that or not, but I don't think it's doesn't really matter. Basically, you pay for security versus being in an unlawful or low sec area like Pyro, where it's lawless, and you just pick a piece of land, but you get nothing from the system because you're in a lawless system. So
Yeah.
I think it'll be really, really interesting to see it. I'm super excited for it. I love base building type games, mostly because I'm a PvP guy. I like the
Mm-hmm.
defending a base aspect. I've been raided live in games before, and it's some of the most fun I've ever had in video games, especially if you have like friends with you doing it, and you're like, "Oh, guys, we're getting raided right now! Like, gear up, get in the vehicles, or get man the turrets, the defenses, whatever you have going on in that game." It's tremendously fun. And then on the flip side, the raiding a base is even more fun. I would argue it's a blast to kind of sit with your friends and try to come up with some strategic way to raid this base. Sometimes you have like scouting parties that'll like be there depending on the game with like binoculars or whatever scouting tools that particular game might have, and it's a blast. And I can't wait to
Mm-hmm.
see what that looks like in Star Citizen. But I am super worried about orgs like that are 1,000 strong, two
Well, I,
thousand
I
strong, whatever.
I think the thing that's I don't want to like be misconstrued is that obviously I I don't know, we had like this whole event a while ago um that we ran with a group, and long story short, I you kind of actually talked about it with Deputy in the last event, and essentially like we had an event, we had a breach in security, and we got hit by GrieferNet. And there was a whole conversation going on Discord, and I kind of, or on Discord, on Twitter, and I kind of popped in and poked my head and was like, "Hey, just so you guys know, like, you got the info on us, you had us dead to rights. You know, obviously that's not how we wanted the event to go, but that's why we run security, right? Is kind of my take on it." And I stand by that, in that like the whole point that we have a military sector of Nightingale, and the whole point that we have our combat ships, is because we want to do combat. And obviously you always want to win, but we're also not naive in thinking that we're good enough to just beat everybody. Like, we know that we're going to get beaten.
Yeah.
Um and I know that I/we are perfectly willing to, get our base rated. That's going to be frustrating. Obviously, it's not going to be ideal, but I'm perfectly willing to defend the base and blah blah blah. I think the part that just will get the part that will be interesting slash difficult is when they implement Maelstrom. It isn't the rating of the base, it's the complete and utter destruction of the base. And I know, like you talked about Rust, and I know that that's one of the things that I'm like, doing hours of work just to have one group be able to just blow it up. I know that's kind of the point of Rust, but I don't know.
Not your thing.
It's not necessarily that it's not my thing. Like, I think it would be super fun to be able to raid a base and blow it up and see all these blown up buildings and blah blah blah. I think that sounds super cool and interesting. But also, I would rather I would rather that base, like, I mean, I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass here, but I would rather that base okay, you leave and an hour later it respawns or something, or they, like, the buildings get repaired, or at least that the build. I guess that would be one way to do it, is if you can blow up a building, but then you can repair it instead of it just nukes it from existence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the materials cost to repair it isn't super high. I would be totally fine with that. Let me defend my base. If I lose, I lose. If we get some buildings blown up, we get them blown up. But now you've created more content for me that I have to go and repair the base, learn, and defend it better next time, and figure out where our defenses are weak and strong and blah blah blah, and how to respond better, and etc. etc. But if it comes in and it just blows everything off the map, and you basically just take a big eraser and wipe it away, and now you have to completely restart from scratch, I think that would get to the point where, at that point, you've invested so much time and energy into a game that already takes so much time just to do anything, to build up this base that got reset to ground zero. That would get old for the small orgs. But again, if it's you got raided, they blew up your buildings, now you've got a bunch of bombed out buildings lying around, and you're gonna have to kind of stand in the ashes of your defeat. That's annoying. That's frustrating. But now, hey, when I log on for the next month, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go and get the resources to repair the buildings and send the drones out to fix everything. Totally fine to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I'm explaining
No,
myself
no,
well.
I 100%. I totally get where you're coming from. It instantly reminded me of when I played DayZ, and it's something I think Star Citizen will struggle with because DayZ has the benefit of community servers, and so these
Yeah.
community servers do things like I only will play on a community server because of what I'm about to explain, where like they'll have a system in place where moderators will literally ban you for destroying someone's base. So
Right.
they'll have what they call like rating rules that you have to abide by. And so that'll be like you can't blow up their walls, you can't blow up their storage facilities, whatnot. The only things you can do are blow up access points to these items. So like if you want to blow up the doors that are preventing you from getting to the loot or the valuables or whatever, blow them up, blow them to hell. It doesn't matter. That's the point. We want you to do that. But what we don't want is for the person to log back on and just see everything they did completely destroyed and completely eviscerated
Mm-hmm.
back to ground zero. And I think if Star Citizen can learn from that, now I'm curious what your thought here. I personally would not be mad if they did not apply Maelstrom to base building. If they didn't apply that and and kept like a different destruction system where like only like a gate or something, or because Star Citizen, like I don't really see a ton of scenarios where you're gonna need to blow up a building
Mm-hmm.
to get access to it. You really just need to get access to the door,
Mm-hmm.
um, or like maybe a
Or the
window
freight elevator or
or a
whatever.
freight elevator. Yeah. So it's like, why would you need to blow up like the back wall? You wouldn't really. I don't think so. Do you think that? What are your thoughts on like Maelstrom not being applied to base building?
I would say I wouldn't be opposed if the base building were more like the mining outposts we have now.
Yeah.
The only issue with that that I see is just hide in a building and wait for the bombs to finish falling. You know, like
Yeah.
as if they make it so that you could still like be killed in a building if a bomb drops right on the building, then I think that sure, I'm fine with that. If that's your solution to not just having your buildings just get blown up. But I think if the buildings are like they are now, where a bomb falls on top of you and you're just invulnerable, haha, walk outside the door and fire your railgun at the bomber, then you run into this issue of then what is the point of defending most of the base? You just have to defend the building or buildings that you're going to just sit in there and you have an invulnerable bomb shelter.
Yeah.
So I think I think that's one of the issues is that there's a lot of issues that CIG has to resolve here to make it actually work. But I again like I would be fine with it if they didn't make Maelstrom apply. I also think that they're going to lean towards making Maelstrom apply with just the way they've been going, and I think if they do make Maelstrom apply, then just make it so that I can just
Repair. Yeah.
land the Pioneer, open up or land the BLD or whatever, and send out the drones to repair the buildings and be like, hey, here's the crater that used to be our hangar. Well, I have the materials and whatnot from our other base that didn't get raided, and I could just fly that over and repair the buildings, and
Yep.
call it a day. In that case, I think it would make for some very interesting gameplay, interesting um, screenshots. I think for people who make machinima to be able to set up like a base because you have a big org, just build a base, bomb it, and set that up for like a machinima thing would be super fascinating and super interesting and a useful tool to have. And like I just think it makes for real. I think it would make for very interesting gameplay if you have ways to like kind of like what you were saying, blow out the back wall and see how that changes things.
Yeah.
But there just has to be a way that if the base does get nuked, you don't have to rebuild everything from scratch every single time.
Yeah.
I think if you
I
don't do
agree.
that, then small orgs will basically be given an ultimatum of assimilate into the big orgs or never rise.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Now I have another question. I don't. This will never happen, so this is purely a fun hypothetical question. But do you think that CIG has backed themselves into a corner a little bit by having base building and having bombers? And I don't mean like an Eclipse or a Tally. I'm talking more like an A2 or an A1 type
Mm-hmm.
bomber. Personally, I
Um,
think they kind of shot themselves in the foot by having like a Moab type thing exist in a game that's going to have player built bases.
I mean, I would agree, except for is the key here. I do think that they've made the situation a little more interesting on themselves. I think one of the ways they're going to try to counter that is with um, AI blades, AI defense, like point defense turrets and things like that, where they're they've already shown off like point defense systems on the capital ships of Squadron 42. Obviously,
Yep.
we're demilitarized, blah blah blah, whatever. Um, with AI blades, if you can use those on your defense turrets and set them to target bombs, I think the point and what they want to try to get to is you have these bombers, but if you're going to use them, you have to pick your targets. I don't think making a bomb expensive is a counter to using a bomber. I think making a bomber be a tactical choice that either you're going to have so many bombers dropping so many bombs that some are going to get through, or you have to pick a base that has weak anti-air systems, or send in a team to disable those anti-air systems and then send the bombers in. Like, I think the way they're going to try to do it is to make it so that you cannot just send in a flying delete button and win every time. They're going to make it so that it's more of a tactical choice that entirely depends on how you engage with your target. And if you just fly in and go, oh, there's a base, let's veer the A2 over and drop a bomb and see what happens, that's going to be more of a risk, because you have just as much of a chance of it being ineffective as effective. But if you're actually like, oh, we found a base, we scouted it out, they have these anti-air defense guns, so if we can sit here with a rail gun on this hill, then we can take them out, and then we can fly in the bomber and take out the heavier defenses and then just roll right in, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I it will be very interesting to see how they choose to balance it, because I think that's supposed to be part of the fun of it, is like the tactical execution of raiding a base, because we 100% know there will be defenses. There's going to be turrets, shields. We'll see what that actually looks like when it comes in the game, and
Yeah. Shields, air quotes.
yeah, well, yeah, that's a whole nother topic, but um, it'll be really interesting. Every game kind of handles it in a different way. So, like Rust, for example, has automated defense systems that are like incredibly lethal. And like they'll have a turret just watching a door, and the second you blow up that door, you're just absolutely fried by this automated turret. So like if they use something like that, well, then there's going to be a lot of fun tactical challenges that come with that, and like the quote unquote meta builds of building a base in a certain way so that your defenses work the best or whatnot. It'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, 100%. I know we've already started talking about like people who have experience in things like Star Wars Galaxies and different games, and how they structured their defenses, and how they worked as an org to be organized in getting materials from A to B and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be, I think the part that makes me the most excited for the future after 1.0 is the fact that being an organized organization and planning and logistics are actually going to matter.
Yeah.
Rather than just sort of talking about it and being like, yeah, our planning and logistics is everybody be at Seraphim at 6 p.m. and then still wait for an hour because half of them are at Hurl 3. You know, like Hurl 1, Hurl 2, and they're all coming from 3 different locations to get to Seraphim because nobody signed on earlier to fly there. And that's not logistics. I want to actually be planning, okay, this is where our defenses need to go. Let's put the hangar here because then it's right next to our fabricator so that we can land, unload the stuff in the freight elevator and not have to drive across the base to get to the fabric. You know what I mean? Like, I think being able to actually have planning matter is what this game has been building towards, what they've been talking about, and now we can actually start to do more than just theory craft with our own brains, but theory craft with what we've seen and be like, this is going to be interesting with how we see the game work now and how we can see the game working in the future.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's even though my org is very, very small, I have a lot of ambassadors, very few members currently. It was fun for me because I'm like, okay, I know where I want to be. I know roughly how many members, actual members, not like ambassadors and anything else, but like a core group. I know roughly how many I want, and it was like a really fun motivator for me to kind of get back out there, start recruiting, and start doing other things, because I'm super excited to kind of see what the possibilities look like. And yeah, it's gonna be a blast. I think every single part of it is gonna be fun, and it's gonna be frustrating, and that's all gonna be part of the experience in a cool way.
Yep, I agree.
Well, cool. Well, I think for the sake of time, I think we will stop talking about CitizenCon unless you have any more thoughts. I generally speaking, for the 1.0 stuff, I think that's kind of just so far out there that it's like, I mean, we can talk about it, space stations and all that, but I think it's so far out there. We can talk about that another day if we have you on.
What I could say is one thing and one thing only.
Okay.
Super exciting. Can't wait for it.
Yes.
Like
One
everything
day,
else,
soon TM.
yeah, one day soon TM, lots of stuff that's still gonna have to go into it. But if slash when that is actually added to the game, that's going to be. I mean, I know I said one thing, but now I have another comment. But the one guy I talked about earlier did the rescue beacons. He basically said everybody's like, I don't think you understand. If I can have a station, I am getting us a station. We need 500 members. I'm getting us 500 members. You need all the materials. I will put on a marathon of material gathering unlike anything this game has ever seen. I am getting a station. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So super exciting.
My only response to this, because I don't really want to get too into it, but I thought something was really cool, and I meant to send it to you, but I forgot to. Was like that screenshot that they, I don't know if it was a slide or someone captured it from a video, but it made the rounds on social media, and I think you actually shared it with someone else too. But it's like that screenshot where you saw like the 6 stations connected to each other.
Yep. Daisy chained together there.
Yeah, and I immediately thought like orgs and their alliance just like daisy chained like that. It's gonna be so cool.
Oh, we literally, basically that panel dropped, and we have a connected chat for our alliance thing, like your connected chat in your server, and we have it just with Vertanen and 12th, and immediately that chat started blowing up with be like, oh my gosh, like the possibilities of being able to have our stations linked together and our bases close together and all this kind of stuff, like being able to work together and be like, all right, so everybody will work together and we'll build the Vertanen station, and then we'll build the Nightingale station, and then we'll build the, and be able to like work, and obviously dreaming big dreams, sucking on the hopium and the copium here, like injecting it into my veins, but the being able to have that vision of 1.0 is like, oh, I actually can see what the org is working towards, and finally have a reason to log on every day instead of logging on every day, opening up the mission tab and being like, oh yeah, 50% of these don't work. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tremendously exciting, and I cannot wait to learn more about what that's going to look like, the process, the cost. The one thing that really fascinated me was the build times. Then they're saying how like the bigger the item gets, the larger the build time is. I don't know if you've ever played Tarkov or whatnot, but there is an element in that game where like you progress. Now it's all personal progression. There's no like group progression, but as you kind of build your home base, you can start crafting items. And so like one of the things you can do is you can build a Bitcoin farm, and those Bitcoins, it will literally generate Bitcoins for you that you can then turn around and sell for a lot of money. But the Bitcoins take about 1 day to produce, and but then there's other items that can take like 6 or 7 days to produce.
Oh, bagels are going to take months.
And exactly, so I'm really curious to see kind of how they do that. Like a Bengal, I'm hoping that takes months. That should not be something that just gets popped out in 24 hours. and
it'd be cool if they did it like a build in stages sort of thing,
Yeah, like stage 1, you need these resources. Stage 2, you need that. It's gonna be insane. I cannot wait. So what I'll do?
I'll shut up about it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I could totally go forever talking about that stuff.
Theory craft for days.
Exactly. For the sake of time, I think we'll take about, and it's not as much time as I wanted to, but we're running a little bit later. So I think we'll take about 15 minutes, maybe 20, 25. We'll see how the conversation goes to talk about like actual org stuff. And I was hoping to talk a little bit more about this, so I might have to have you on some other day, but dig more into this. But
I didn't even realize how much time had gone by. I've just been enjoying. You're just chatting.
Yeah, exactly. It's been like an hour and 45 minutes.
Hot damn.
Yeah, we've been going for a while, and it's been good. I've been enjoying it. I have zero complaints.
Me neither. I'm totally fine.
So org stuff. Let's start off with history. Why'd you start Nightingale? I know you said there was some Perseus ties there. Why'd you start it? What was initially your goal for what you wanted it to be, and kind of how has that goal evolved in the? It's been what, 2 years and a quarter, I think, right?
It has been 2 years and what month are we in? October. So it's been 2 years and a month and change. Like we just barely had our 2 year anniversary. So yeah, I mean personal history. Like I said, I started the game. I had an Aurora MR. Flew that thing for a while and did so many illegal surveillance missions that I was so sick and tired of them, and I definitely crashed into those stupid stationary satellites that you had to destroy so many times. I don't want to admit. Upgraded it to a Reliant core, and really actually loved that ship. Had a lot of personality, and I honestly thought that I would just be a solo player. I would maybe get to a Cutlass Black in game, and like I remember I like earned a Vanguard Harbinger and was like, this is so cool. And anyways, I had these I kind of played it on and off, and enjoyed a lot of it, but frankly, if people who play Star Citizen solo, hats off to you, because I just couldn't get into it on my own. Not as much. Like I enjoyed playing it, but I enjoyed just a few things and I could never really experience a lot of it. Um, in fact, I think I started playing. I was playing in 3.17, and Siege of Orison came out, and I went to do Siege of Orison, and was wearing a really nice set of Orc Mark X Singularity armor that I thought looked super cool. And I took 3 steps, and a player shot me in the back of the head, looted my super cool armor, and kept running. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was the last time I did that alone. Anyways, long story short, somewhere along the line, because I picked up the game in March, and in September, um, I can't remember how I became aware of the RSI Perseus. Um, I somehow did, anyways. Can't remember if it was like a YouTube video or what, but I saw the Perseus and like fell in love. And I know, every citizen is guilty of seeing a concept ship and going, "Oh my gosh, I have to have this concept ship." And I got in my head that I wanted to get it now, because if I got it before it released, it would be cheaper than if I got it after it released. And of course, this is September. So I went on to the good old gray market, onto a website that I won't name, and looked up a Perseus and hummed and hawed and hummed and hawed and went, this is a stupid amount of money. And then I said to myself, well, this is going to be the only ship I ever get. Like, it's going to be this and like my Aurora. So this will be like my big ship. And this is the ship that like, oh, like I just absolutely love it. I'd watched YouTube videos on it for like 3 weeks straight. Rewatched so many videos on it. And so I went ahead and I got my Perseus. And then I was on campus at my university doing my undergrad, and I got the Perseus while I was on campus, and I was walking around feeling like, oh my gosh, I just spent a ton of money on a JPEG ship for a video game that I've played for less than a year. I'm an idiot. Oh wait, I don't have any friends to use this ship with. Like I had met like 3 people in the game, and I only ever played with one of them more than once. You know what I mean? Um, and so I basically was like, I saw like a recruiting ad for another organization, and funnily enough, so I decided to start Nightingale. Basically I decided to join this other org, but I was like, it would be kind of cool for like my personal character's lore or whatever, if I was coming from another org. So I created this organization, and my ship I had already named the Nightingale, so I named my organization after my ship and called it Nightingale Industries. And joined this org. 2 days into that org, I was like, this is not the place for me. This isn't gonna fit. This isn't where I want to stay. And I basically just started like sending out invites and trying to recruit. And I mean, I won't go into the whole freaking story of how it started, but basically I had one guy join, and we met up in a VC that night to be like, to just chat about potentially building this org together. We were in game. We met up with 2 other people, and I went from myself to 4. I went from 1 to 4 people in the Discord by the end of one day, just by happenstance. And when that happened, I don't know, I caught the bug and was like, maybe I could turn this into something, get like to 25, 30 people. And in less than a year, we had broke 100 and we're still climbing. And I was like, the whole time I was sitting there going, what the freak? How the heck did this happen? But yeah, like I'm kind of rambling here, but basically I started the org on a complete whim with no real plan to actually be able to grow this and turn this into something. And then after I caught the vision of maybe I could actually get people to actually get a group going here. I mean, looking back on it, if I knew how much work it would take to get to this point, I probably wouldn't have signed up. But I wouldn't have started the org. But at the same time, I'm so glad I did and went through all that, because I look forward to hopping into our Discord server every single day. Like every day, I'm super excited to be able to engage with the friends that I've made over the course of these last 2 years, and being able to sit outside and like, I mean, I can pull up my Discord server right now and we have like 10 people sitting in a VC right now that are all playing games together, and it just absolutely like makes my day to see a bunch of players that are enjoying the community that we've all worked so hard to build. Um, and it makes it all more worth it. I mean, I enjoy it so much to be able to hop in and use the ships that I want, that I have, and use other people's ships and be able to do these big events and play the game that we all dream it like and this game that we've been dreaming about for years. But being able to just create a community where even when patches are rough like right now, people still want to hop into VCs and play other games because they just enjoy each other's company, enjoy the community that we've created. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, no, you're good. I mean,
Little bit of
I think it's
word
good
vomit.
for people out there who are interested in starting orgs to kind of hear that startup perspective, and kind of like you said, like there's a lot more that goes into it than you probably initially realize. But like you said,
Oh,
you also are thankful you did and don't really regret it.
yeah.
Um, I know when I was with you guys, I think I joined. I think it was before 100, but you were at like 80 something, 85 or six, I think, if I recall.
When
Um,
you joined,
yeah, I think so.
I believe so.
It was like
Something aware,
80 to
something around
100,
there.
something like that. And
Hmm.
it was cool for me to. Um, I was there for I think a little over a year, and
Hmm.
it was super cool being a part of that and watching you
Well, you
kind of
were.
take things and
Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
just see the growth. And I 100% agree. The community was awesome. Getting to see people in VCs, getting to do events with everybody, getting to do casual gameplay, getting to explore other games with people, like kind of making friends, all the different communities and stuff. It was a ton of fun.
Hmm. Oh yeah, being able to hop in and play Helldivers and Space Marine 2 and No Man's
Yeah.
Sky and Baldur's Gate 3 and I'm listing off all these games, but like I mean even just playing like just stupid little $10 games that like
Squad Star Wars mod for that one day.
yeah, oh my gosh, like it was just it's so much fun to have a group of people that I'm like, I know that if I was to go hop in the Nightingale server and nobody was there and I'd hop in a VC and you wait like an hour, they'll be like you'll start to have people just join up and be like, "What game are you playing?" "Oh, I'll join too." Or even if they don't join, they're just in the VC because they just want to chat with the people that they've met and made friends with, and I think that's been the most exciting and fulfilling part of running an org, um, is building the community and not just building the org. And I think that that's a very key part. I guess like if I was going to give advice to somebody who's thinking of starting an org, I would say brace yourself for a lot of work and a lot of drama over things that you just wouldn't expect, and it's not going to be a straight or smooth road. You're going to be dealing with a lot of things that you're just like, really, this is the issue that we're dealing with here. um, but also building, how do I put this, don't take it too seriously.
Yeah.
Like I think realizing very early on that Nightingale was going to be a place that was more of a community than it was going to be a strict organization. Um, I've been part of, very briefly, orgs that were just a little more strict of enforcing rank and this, that, and the other thing, and I just found that building a community that is also an organization within Star Citizen has been such a fulfilling experience. And maybe other people enjoy other things, right? Like there's no knock if you enjoy, milsim, where everything is milsim, more than you just enjoy hanging out with buddies. Everybody to each their own. But I personally love the community aspect of it, and being able to grow it as a place that's got a very healthy culture, um, over just a healthy organization operations within the game.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as I kind of interview people over these next couple weeks. My goal is to kind of mix it up. Like I don't want all of the orgs to kind of be more community focused. I do want to get some of those more hardcore ones in there because I'd love to hear some of their motivations too. Because I'm kind of with you. I've kind of been more on the like I wouldn't really care if I was in an org like if Nightingale didn't ever expand into other games, but still kept that community aspect and only played Star Citizen, I still would have been happy with that.
Yep.
Because that community aspect is really what I care about. I didn't really care that we played other games or whatnot, because whether that happens in that Discord or maybe you create a group chat with some of your buddies that you met in that server and you go do it off Discord, whatever. That stuff's going to happen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm really curious when I start talking to some other people, like, so why do you prefer this method over the, kind of the more community aspect? Because I agree. I think it's super fulfilling to be a part of a community. I think it's you meet a lot of really cool people, a lot of cool perspectives, and um, it is weird touching on the point you made about like expect drama over like the weirdest things. I remember
Mm-hmm.
in Nightingale, I was always shocked about some of the things that you would that cause drama, and it's like this feels so weird or so small or so insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and yet it's causing like
Yep.
this multi-day debate or discussion or whatever, and it's like
Yep.
why. But also there's like this weird understanding from everyone that like it needs to happen to a degree. Like you need to learn these things about people, and you need to
Mm-hmm.
see how they react and handle to different situations. And I know for me it taught me a lot. Even real life things, I feel like I learned a lot from being a part of Nightingale and being kind of growing up the ranks and growing up with you guys. And I think there are some things you learn in there. Like you kind of learn some managerial skills in there, and
Yep.
um,
Well,
yeah, there's a lot of really cool things I think that comes out of something like that.
and I think kind of like what you said, like you have to understand that you are going to deal with drama. And frankly, I think part of that is to realize that just because someone joins your organization does not mean they are someone worth keeping there forever and always.
For sure.
I think, I mean, obviously I'm not going to call out names of people, but like we had somebody who, for example, we got in a debate about insurance and how insurance was going to work. And this is before this CitizenCon. This was like almost 2 years ago. This is probably within the first year of the org, maybe first year and a half. And we had somebody who they joined the organization and essentially were making the claim that if you bought a ship with real money and it blew up and you didn't have insurance, it was gone forever. And everyone was like, nah, dude, like there's no way that your ship gets blown up, you don't have insurance, and it's just taken from you. Like, congratulations, you just spent $1,500 on an Idris that you will never see again because you let your insurance run out, you know?
Yeah.
And we were all like, no, that's not going to be how that works. And, you know, I'm not going to go into the whole debate, but essentially it went on for 2 straight days that he was bringing it up in the general chat. So we were like, "Okay, dude, like, time to cut it." And that was his reason to leave. And, you know, obviously maybe things were through the text chat. I don't know what he was thinking it was on his side of the coin, but it was just one of those moments where it was like, just because somebody joins, and, you know, obviously if somebody has a take that you don't agree with, that doesn't mean you're just going to force them out of the org. Like, we kept it civil, but you'll have people who join who they just don't jive with your community, and that doesn't mean you have to force them out the door and push them out the door. I mean, we've had people who, I mean, I bent over backwards to try to make comfortable in Nightingale, and in the end they leave, and there's no hard feelings. Like, if you leave, it's sad to see you go, but if we're not the best place for you, then we're not the best place for you. And also, don't feel like you as an org leader are doing a bad job if if you have people who are leaving because they just don't get along with the group that you've created.
For
Now,
sure.
if you have 3 people and 75 people have joined and left, maybe do some self-reflection. But yeah, like, just don't think that absolutely every single person who joins is perfect for your org, and if they leave, it's a failure on your part. Sometimes you just won't get along, you'll disagree over stupid things, and that'll be their reason to leave, and you'll be sitting there going, really? Like, that was just a small disagreement, like, we could have moved past that. And if that's their reason to leave, oh well. Like, I hope you enjoy your time in the verse. Would have loved to have it work out with you here, but that's not a failure on my part. That's just, we didn't jive. That's too bad, you know.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think, um, yeah, I think I agree with everything you just said, 200%. And I think to kind of add on to that too is like, as a leader, whether you're the owner or you're like, you guys call it high command or officers or whatever. I think if you're in any kind of leadership role and you're kind of discussing with members in really any capacity, it doesn't really matter what level they are, understanding that the difference between like a text chat discussion versus a voice chat discussion. You wouldn't think there's a big difference there, but there absolutely is. And I know you and I have experienced that plenty of times.
Oh yeah.
And so like a conversation in text chat that you might think you're laughing about, or you're just having a friendly debate or discussion, the other side might not feel that way. They might be completely different. And
well, like,
that's super important.
Like, oh, sorry. Yeah. Like, we had, I mean, just again as an example, that I'm not going to specify anybody, but we had somebody who was an officer that, you know, I mean, great guy. We thought great of him. He was having a rough day. We didn't know, and we just cracked a joke. Like, he said something, and we cracked a joke of like, "Oh, you silly guy, doing this." And it's a kind of joke that we've cracked a million times before, and he took huge offense to it. Was super upset about it, and it kind of blew up into this thing. And I was like, "Okay, hold the phone, hold the phone." And so I got him into a VC later that night and was like, "Hey, like, this is where I was coming from." And then he explained where he was coming from and all the external factors that played into his reaction. And it was one of those things that, like, by the end of that conversation, felt closer to the guy than I did. You know what I mean? Like, when we were in the VC, by the end of the chat, it was like, "Hey, like, care for you, buddy. Like, not, I never mean any offense, just joking with you as a friend." And we ended that conversation on a high note instead of just continuing a text conversation and getting more and more and more and worked up. And I think that's important as well. Is sometimes as an org leader, you're going to have to embrace the suck and be like, look, we're going to pull this into a voice chat. And I don't really want to be in a voice chat with you, but I'm going to be in a voice chat with you because, and embrace the awkward and just be like, let's talk this out, because I guarantee you it's not as big as we're making this out to be in a text chat. And as soon as you start explaining, it's like, oh, so somebody misread this one message an hour ago and read it with a different tone that it was sent in, and that led to this whole disagreement, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's honestly part of being an org leader, is recognizing that sometimes you're going to have to embrace the suck, and sometimes you're going to be put into a position that you have to do what the like, how do I put this? Sometimes the rest of your admin or your team that you work with will agree on a direction or a decision that you might not necessarily agree with personally, but you have to make that call of, am I going to go along with this decision of this group of people that I have chosen to run this org with me, or am I going to piss all of them off and be like, no, this is my org, I'm going to make the decision? Well, and some orgs, I know I listened to your last episode, you were like, I'd like to get an org in here where there's only one guy who runs everything.
Yeah,
I
like a
like how he does
supreme
it.
leader.
Yeah, I would love to hear how that works too, because to me, that sounds like, to me, I couldn't understand that working. And so again, like, the whole reason I just say that is just that sometimes as an org leader, you have to understand that just because this is quote unquote your house, you have invited people into your house. And just because you go, this is the decision I like the most, you have to be willing to be outvoted. And I guess that I'll qualify that by saying it's all it depends on context, right? Like, if you have somebody come in who's like, four people come in and they all join the org, they become leadership in some way, shape, or form, and they're like, I think we should completely change the way the organization has always functioned and become a pirate organization when we have been a
Yeah.
mining organization all along. Then I think it's up to you as the leader to be like, no, that's not how we're going to roll. Like, this is the vision that I started. This is the vision I'm going to work towards. And I am unwilling to sacrifice my vision and hard work because I am outvoted by these four people who want to dramatically change the organization into something it's not. So I guess I guess the best way to put it is, one of the keys to being a good, or at least decent, I like to think I'm a decent org leader anyways, is being malleable enough to recognize when you need to draw a line in the sand and kind of put your foot down and be like, no, this is a line we're not crossing. And also when to realize that you should not be the end all be all, what I say goes dictator, because people want to feel like they can contribute and make a difference to the group they are a part of.
For sure. Um, One thing I always liked about you guys and the setup that you had was, well, now it's a little bit different, but it's still kind of the same concept. Where at least when I was with you guys, you had divisions, and you had each division kind of had a lead, and generally those people kind of made up your high command, and then you were kind of the owner, but still a member of high command. And I really respected the way you had that set up, where like each division leader kind of had the freedom to make a lot of decisions, and if there was a larger decision that needed to be discussed, then that became a discussion. But that was for large decisions. For like those medium and small decisions, you kind of handed out that freedom and flexibility. And I think it goes to what you were just saying. People need, well, maybe not need, but at least want to feel like they're involved and feel like their time is actually being useful, and they're not just speaking to a brick wall. And I think that's important, and I think it's something you guys have done really well, and I think it's part of what part of this success that you guys have had.
I mean, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Um, I the org I'm starting, even though it's very small, will ultimately have a structure that will operate very similarly to that. Because as I've joined a lot of other orgs as an ambassador, just to kind of learn about them and see how they operate, I've probably joined 50 at this point, and I think generally speaking, you guys have one of the better operating systems from a top-down structure, and so that'll be something that I look to kind of mimic in my own way. But generally, it's going to operate the same. And so yeah, so for all the org leaders listening out there, or maybe all the future org leaders, I would take notes because he knows what he's talking about.
Well, it's funny you should say that because we're also in the middle of talking like we're in the middle of very intense discussions about how we're going to adapt our structure and make it flow better than it already does. Because like you said, I not trying to keep lengthening this out. I'll try and wrap this up here, but let you keep going wherever you're going to go. But yeah, like we've basically tried to function that it's been a large it's been a large council. You have the division leaders who are able to make their decisions and contribute and whatnot, but then basically that just I guess the point that I'll make is I learned really quickly that if I was going to just tell everyone how I wanted everything, the org would have failed a long time ago. Because I just don't know everything, and so I have to rely on, and not just have to, but I'm lucky to have great people who have chosen to stay and help build this place and build Nightingale into what it is today, who come in with their expertise and can go, hey, these other communities, this is how it worked, and I could see that working better than the way that this works, and me going, you know what? I never would have thought of that. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think that is a good segue into kind of my next point, and this will probably have to be my last point, just or last kind of topic, just for the sake of time. Um, but what's the best way to word this question? When it comes to making, I think hard is a bit of an exaggeration, but for lack of better words, hard. When it comes to making quote unquote hard decisions, um, what are some of your thoughts? Because I know, I'm speaking from personal experience, working with you guys and stuff. You guys have made a couple of kind of quote unquote larger changes throughout the last 1 to 2 years in terms of structures and leadership and um, uh, member management, we'll call it. And so, what are your recommendations to speaking to future org leaders or maybe current ones when it comes to a healthy process to make what you feel like are necessary changes, or maybe like your leadership structure feels are necessary changes? What are some recommendations you might give?
Recommendations for making big decisions. Oh, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of different avenues to take this down, but I think
So actually, I'm going to interject real quick and just kind of add into it. So maybe hopefully this steers it in the right way I'm hoping it goes. Like for example, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to use a little bit of specific detail here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I won't name names or anything, but like when you guys decided to move from divisions into a kind of a general sector change.
Yes.
So like when it came to that, I thought you guys had a really good structure, even though it didn't really work in my favor. And ultimately, it's kind of why I decided to step down. I wasn't really mad about it because I still think the process was really healthy. I think if the general consensus was that this needed to happen, then it needed to happen. And so when it comes to decisions like that, being a more specific example where something that I was a part of and really excited for, but the majority wasn't necessarily in the same boat as me, um,
Yeah.
I might lose something, but it's for the sake, it's for the betterment of the org. So when it comes to decisions like that, what are some recommendations for future org leaders out there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give a little bit of context to that. Galley here used to be part of the high command team of Nightingale, in charge of our bounty hunting division. And just long story short, over the course of time and some changes that were happening and a lot of other details, essentially we decided to merge the bounty hunting division with our other combat divisions and change our structure a little bit. And like Galley said, like it was tough because obviously we didn't want to lose Galley as a high command member, but and now you obviously have your own org and whatnot, and happy for you, obviously. But I think that was a very tough decision to make. Frankly, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved and whatnot, which is annoying sometimes. But I think when it comes to making tough decisions or decisions that dramatically alter the structure of the org, I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind. One is you as an org leader who has started an org came in with a vision. And that vision likely has adapted a lot over the course. I mean, when I started, it was going to be combat, combat, and combat, and then maybe a little bit of like mining. And then I legitimately, the whole reason we have a medical division is because I looked on the community thing and realized, oh yeah, there's literal medical groups that their entire org is based off of medical. I forgot that was even a gameplay loop that was talked about. And so my vision, obviously, that I came in with had to adapt to include that. And so the vision has adapted a lot, but I think you typically come in with a general idea if you're going to make an org of the general gist of how you want the org to feel and more or less how you want it to function. And I think there's something to be said for trusting in your gut and being like, this change that is proposed does not go with what the vision is for this organization. So that's a no. But there's also something to be said for being able to take yourself out of the equation a little bit and look at it from a bigger picture and recognize that just because you came up with an idea doesn't mean it is the best idea. I know when I started, we were going to have, I think it was 5 divisions, and each division was going to have one captain, and those people were going to run everything. And that has evolved quite a bit. But I know in the early days, I realized, holy crap, I can't administrate all of this myself. And I had to adapt the way that I was running the org and trust people who had been with the org to come into a more admin position and help out. And then they came in obviously with their own ideas and their own experience running with different groups and have made suggestions to streamline or remove the plethora of hats that my inexperienced self when I started this thing came up with, where there was so many hard lines of what people could and couldn't do and this, that, and the other thing. And oh, it was super confusing even for myself to navigate. And I think when it comes to making big decisions that you might not be 100% on board with, I think if it's something that is very much you are 100% not for, you feel like this changes the very fiber of the org, then I think that there is a time and a place, like I said earlier, to kind of say no, this isn't something that I'm comfortable doing, or this isn't a direction I'm comfortable taking us in. And sometimes that might mean you watch a bunch of officers walk away, and that sucks. I mean, we had a whole situation that we lost 4 of our most active officers because we wouldn't bend over and just go along with what they were doing. And that was unfortunate. And it was unfortunate to watch people that you had been friends with and interacted with for over a year in some of these cases walk away and go do their own thing. But you have to have faith in the fact that you have a vision that people have bought into, and they bought into the product that you were offering. Not that you're offering a product, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
people join Nightingale Industries, and the people who come and they stay and they enjoy being here are here because of the culture that you and your admin team have created. And just because an admin comes up with an idea doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good one. And you have to have faith in that if people have come and joined the group that you are running, they're there because they enjoy the idea and the feeling that you have curated. And if you have a group come in that's going to radically try and shift that, then you need to feel comfortable saying no and being like, this is going to hurt. We might lose some people that have been very strong contributors in activity and in content and in administrative stuff. And they've been contributors for like a year. We had one guy who was here for almost two. He left just before our second anniversary, and he had been here almost since day one. And that was really like, it was sad to see them go, but it was also one of those moments where I had to go, I know that people are here for not me, but for the org that me and the high command have created, not the org that these guys wanted it to become. And
Yeah.
just because they leave, and that might hurt for a while, doesn't mean the day is lost. It doesn't mean everything is over and it's all falling apart. It just means you might take a little while to replace that input that you had. But that's not a bad thing. It's a bump in the road. It's not the end of the road. So I think there's that kind of a change, and then there's also the kind of change where, like the thing that you're talking about, where we went from having this rigid division structure to being a little bit more of a sector structure. That, I mean, you have groups that cover, anyways, more of an umbrella and less of a lane. And I wasn't really for that change when it was first brought up, and I had to, eat some humble pie and be like, I am going to give the people suggesting these ideas my time to at least hear out their proposal, because if I don't, then that's bad on me. They're coming to me with an idea of a way they feel they could improve our organization. I'll listen to them. And as I listened to them with kind of an open mind and tried to think of how it could interact with the org, I started to realize I liked that plan a lot better than what we had in place at the time. And then that conversation then had to go on to the rest of the admin team, and everybody else had to, get on board with that and blah, blah, blah. And anyways, my point I'm getting to is I had to sit there and listen to an idea that when I walked into it, I was like, I don't like this idea. And it has served Nightingale very well to make the changes that were suggested in the long run. In the short run, staying status quo was easier, but in the long run, I could see how it would affect the org in some ways, and in some ways that I didn't even think of, and yet it's still been a positive experience and has led to further tweaks that have helped make the org a better place that runs more smoothly and where everybody feels like they are more involved in supporting and growing the organization. Now, the other caveat I'll say this, and then I can stop rambling because I feel like I'm just sort of spouting off here. But the other thing I'll say is that don't fall into the habit of feeling like you need to change major things about your organization every week. Because we had a period at Nightingale where, I mean, I have the freaking spreadsheets where it was like we changed the org structure 3 or 4 times in a period of 6 months, and by the end of it, we had like 3 of our officers be like, "All right, you are on timeout. This is the last time. Don't touch it for at least another 6 months." So don't feel like, oh, just every single idea just needs to be implemented, even if it's a good one. Sometimes it might be a good idea, but just let it cook for a while. You don't need to bend over backwards just going, oh, every iteration is going to be a good or better iteration. Sometimes it's better to just let the machine run and then change it after a while when it becomes very clear and obvious, instead of making teeny tiny little tweaks every 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I think that kind of sums up with what will more or less be my final thoughts. I think I'm going to make a statement, and I'm curious how much you agree with it or not, and feel free to tweak it afterwards to what you kind of believe in more. But I think a fair way to sum up on a very general sense of what you were kind of saying is, as a leader in an org that has a couple hundred people at this point, it's important to stay true to a vision. It's important to stay true to an evolving vision because, like you said, it's changed a lot over the last year or two as you've grown. But it's not necessarily important to be rigid on specific ideas. So, like, you started out uh, with wanting 5 divisions, I think you said, or 5, whatever you called it. But you didn't hold on to that and like be like, nope, I started with this and we're gonna run with this until the end of time because this was how my initial vision was, and I'm gonna keep it like that. And this is my idea. I don't care if anything else changes, but this one specific thing can't change. You didn't do that. You said, this is my vision. This is what I want it to be. So you stay true to an evolving vision. You don't stay true to, or no, that's not true. You stay true to an evolving vision. You don't hold hard on specific ideas because specific ideas can change and those can evolve and those can kind of grow into larger things. But as long as they don't affect what ultimately is your vision or that your leadership's division, then you guys are still moving in the right direction because you guys are agreeing on things. So I'm kind of curious what you think about that.
Yeah,
that statement.
I mean, I agree. Yeah, like I think it's the main vision I had for Nightingale was I wanted to make a place where I could come every day and enjoy hanging out with friends who enjoyed the same space game I did, and hopefully create an atmosphere where they wanted to come and stay and not just hang out for Star Citizen, but just hang out because we enjoyed each other's company. And I wanted it to be an organization with a little bit of RP flair and some lore and uniforms and that kind of stuff, and I had that kind of a general gist. Everything about the rest, everything else about the org and the way that that vision is accomplished, I am willing to edit. And I think that's the takeaway is it's you come in with a core of an idea. What kind of org? I want it to be a milsim org where we wear uniforms, we have an RP chat, we are in character, we always deploy on one ship, and we use proper drop ships and ranks matter. If that's the idea you come in with, then great. Now, maybe if somebody comes in and they go, hey, maybe instead of every single operation we use the Valkyrie, maybe we can allow other people to use the Prowler, or like, even if it's something just little like that, to allow yourself to be flexible on can make a lot of difference. I also think, I mean, like for me, I was going to come in and have all these rigid divisions, and then that's evolved more into sectors, that it's not just a, this is our fleet and this is our security. We still have those, but it's under a more of an umbrella of the military like group. This is the people who enjoy combat. And that evolution, and some people might agree or disagree with that change. I mean, obviously you're not going to understand exactly how it works because you're not in Nightingale, not you specifically, but any listeners. But even that evolution was not exactly what I had set up when I first started, but it was a tweak that I had to be willing to consider, and it's led to a better place for the organization as a whole. And it falls within the vision of, let's make a big group of players who enjoy playing together and can play all of the different interests they have in Nightingale, right? So whatever you do to achieve that goal, like be willing to tweak those things, but don't go from, oh, I want to be a big welcoming group to I want to be a rigid mill sim group. Well, you're gonna have that's a bit of a culture shift.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. I think what I will do to close it out is I'm going to talk a little bit directly here to listeners, maybe future leaders, and I'm going to talk to everyone but org leaders. So if you are in an org and you're a part of the leadership, but you're not the owner, CEO, owner, whatever you want to call it, but you're a part of the leadership, I'm going to talk directly to you. As someone I worked with Briggs here, so I was kind of decently high up in Nightingale for 6 months, I think it was a high command, and then I was officer for, I don't know, like 10 months, something like that. Forget the exact timelines there, but some lessons I learned that I kind of want to pass on to other people that helped me tremendously was that as a leader, you are there to support the owner's vision. And if you have your own vision of things that you would like to say or to see it happen or see done, it's important to not let your vision like override the vision of the kind of the owner and what the org's vision is as a whole, and make sure that you're staying true to the original vision and that you don't let, because we saw it happen I think a couple of times in Nightingale, and it happened with me too. It's ultimately why I decided to step down and walk away, was because the vision that I kind of saw for Nightingale didn't quite line up anymore with the vision that the rest of you guys had. And so ultimately I decided to step down, and I think that's important for these other leaders out here, is like, don't feel like you need to trap yourself just because you got high up. If you don't necessarily align with the vision anymore, it's okay to kind of take a step back. And it's also important that if you see a shift happening, that you don't like sabotage it by choosing to stay in the leadership and just causing problems because you're holding on to this thing that was in the past, and the you guys just aren't there anymore. And I think it's super important for kind of leaders to either stay on board the train or hop off, and do that peacefully, do that respectfully, and do that generally don't go sabotaging things just because a change has happened that you don't like or you don't support. They're going to happen eventually, and you pick your battles and you pick your things, and it's important to maintain a healthy culture. And so that I think that'll probably be my final thoughts. What are, if you were to kind of sum up final thoughts for org leaders, org members,
Well,
in creating like a positive culture and a positive growth environment, what are some things I think you would say to close this out here?
I'll qualify one thing that you said, that when you're an org member, you're there to support the org leader's vision, and I think that there's truth, but I will tweak it just a tad.
Okay.
That you're not just there, oh, I'm there to support the org leader's vision, salute the org leader, whatever the org leader says is gospel. I think the important thing to remember, for as an org leader, I want to hear people's suggestions on ways that we can improve the org and the ways that we can make it better. So just because you're a member of the org doesn't mean your input doesn't matter. Just go along with what the org leader's vision is. But on the flip side, also, when you join an organization, you have to understand that you are joining somebody else's baby, that they've put a lot of work into, that they have a dream and a vision for, and you're joining this group and essentially saying that you would like to help enhance this vision. I think that's like you want to give your input into ways to make that vision better, but don't come in there and being like, yeah, I want the org to function like this, and this is how this is how the org should function. And if you join an organization and try to essentially railroad the people that are already there, that have already worked on this org for an extended period of time, and try to just bulldoze them into basically making what your vision of an org is, then you're going to feel like a lot of orgs don't agree with you or disagree with you. Um,
Especially if
like
you've only been there for 14 hours.
Yeah, like if you join an organization and like, hey, we should make a black ops unit and I should be the head of the black ops unit and I will tell these people what to do. You're not going to rub people the right way. People are going to be like, whoa. Like you've been here less than a day. You have no idea how we actually work yet. Like you're still learning the ropes. Like you're coming into our group. We're happy to have you here and maybe someday that's something we consider, but don't come in expecting that you're going to just come in and turn whatever group you're in into whatever group you would run if you were the leader of an org.
Yeah.
But like, and so yeah, like I guess I'm trying. It's kind of like I'm trying to say your input matters, but also don't think that you're the ruler of the world wherever you go and you can just join an organization and be like, this is how it should run. And if they don't go along with your vision, that means they're all assholes.
Yeah, exactly.
You're joining somebody else's organization, somebody else's baby. They might not do things the way that you necessarily like them or would do them in your own organization. And I think that sometimes that's enough for you to leave an organization. I'm not saying that means you have to stay with a group. But what I'm saying is don't feel like you have to stay with a group if it doesn't go with your vision, but also don't feel like you have to leave a group just because it doesn't do everything exactly the way you would like it. A lot of organizations do things differently, and that's what makes each organization unique. I think the more important part is the group of people you're playing with and whether or not this is an organization that you jive with. And then to go along with your point, I think if you're an officer of an organization, I would say there's a few things. Again, your input matters. Um, Obviously, depending on how the org works, but your input matters. Don't, if you disagree with the decision, frankly, if you're an officer who is in an org and you're somebody who is respected in the community, then recognize that, frankly, the leaders of the org that you might feel like you're drifting apart from more often than not would rather continue working with you, and rather that you go, you know what, I think we've drifted apart, I don't agree with this vision anymore, I'm going to go do my own thing but would love to still be in contact with you, versus continuing to hang on, cause problems,
And railroad.
make a railroad, make a big scene, and finally try to leave with this whole like, oh, I'm in the good. But you like, I would rather that you tell me, hey, we're gonna leave and do our own thing, no hard feelings. Like you might not like me anymore, but just leave peacefully and go do your own thing, and allow us to still be able to be cordial, rather than hanging on for so long that you become bitter towards the people that you once considered friends and leave with severed friendships, because that never feels good for anybody.
Yeah,
I,
for
I
sure.
think I think that's there's been a lot of me rambling here, but that's that would probably be my tips there.
Yeah, and part two, I guess, of my closing thoughts is going directly off of what you just said. Because people listening, that is almost, well, I'll let Briggs verify. From my perspective, that's exactly what I did. I kind of was with Nightingale for, like I said, 9 to 12 months ish in leadership. I'm not sure the exact timeline there, but
Mm.
throughout the entire period, were there things that if it was myself, would I have done differently? 100%. And I'm almost positive if you asked every single one of the officers there if there was some little thing they would do different, I bet money that every single one of them would be like, oh, I would change this one thing to do that, whatever. But
Mhm.
it's important, and it was important for me realizing, like, okay, you suck it up, live with it. At the end of the game, you're playing a video game. It's a freaking Discord. Who cares? It's a bunch of people online. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But
Am I having fun or not?
exactly. And through the entire time, I was having a blast. I loved hanging out with you guys. I loved meeting all the people there. I've met a lot of really cool people there, and I've jived with some, and I didn't jive with others. And I think that's going to be a natural thing for a lot of people. But what was important for me was realizing that there was a point where the number of things that I didn't necessarily align with or agree with reached a point where I realized that had I continued to stay, I would have become the railroad. And would it have been intentional? Absolutely not, because I loved working with you guys, but it would have been unintentional. And it, to all the people out there that might be in a similar situation, I strongly encourage you that if that thought is there, I think a good starter place is talk to your leadership and kind of let them know that that's kind of where you're at. And maybe you guys come to some agreement, and maybe you don't. And if you don't, for me, it was kind of my time, and I realized it was a good time for me to step away. And that's ultimately kind of what prompted me starting my own thing. And because I really valued my friendships with you guys, I still am in contact with several of you guys, including you and a couple others. And I wasn't looking to sabotage that or railroad that. And I have a ton of connections that I made to you guys. And I think it's super important for everyone listening to kind of take note of that process. And if the vision isn't aligning, then don't cause a scene and just kind of fade away. Take a step back. It's at the end of the day, it's about you having fun. And if you're not having as much fun as you think you can have, and you think you can do it better somewhere else, go take a shot at it. And if you can't, then it is what it is. But don't become a problem.
Yeah. And I guess my last thing that I'll just say at the very end is sometimes the best move is to take a step away and go do your own thing because you don't agree with the way the org is going. But sometimes it might just be a better move. You just need to take a little time away. And you know, I know that there have been people that we've had who we still all still got along with and wish nothing but the best and wish they stayed with us and got along great with them in VCs. But things started, long story short, things just piled up and bottled up and text chats were read wrong and whatnot. And I think sometimes you just need to understand that it is okay to step away for a while, come back and see if things have changed. And if things are still the same and you still don't get along with them, well then don't feel like you have to stay. But
for sure.
But also don't feel like, oh, I don't get along with these people, I just need to throw in the towel every single time is the answer.
Exactly.
Sometimes it might just be, hey, I need to take a break, step back, come back, and see if it's just that I'm caught up in something else, or if it truly is this issue that I'm seeing, you know?
Yeah.
Anyways, I get off my high horse now, get off my soapbox.
No, I think it's good. I think it's important for people to hear. I think you have a ton of valuable information, context. There's a lot of history in Nightingale, I think, that you can speak to, and both good and bad things, and not necessarily bad manager things, but just bad experiences as a whole and good experiences. And
honestly, I would say most of it is I wouldn't say bad necessarily. I would say they're rough, but every single experience that I've had has helped me be a better org leader.
Yeah.
And helped me learn for the future, and sometimes and being able to recognize, you know what? I completely mishandled that. That's my bad. It has been a skill that's taken a lot of time to develop.
Yeah. So to wrap us up, I think a few words of encouragement for org leaders. If you're thinking about starting an org, take the leap. It's worth it. Like you just heard Briggs and I talk about, The community you can build is tremendous. The value is there. It's gonna be a fight. You're gonna have to pick some battles, and it's not gonna be sunshine and rainbows every single day. But is it gonna be sunshine and rainbows probably majority of the days? Yeah, and it's gonna be a ton of fun. It's gonna be a blast. You're gonna meet a lot of cool people, a lot of cool experiences. There's a lot to benefit from. And in a game like Star Citizen, like we were talking about in the first half, there's a lot of cool things coming too, and there's a lot to be excited for. To be an org leader, or if you're not, don't want to start an org and you want to become a part of leadership, I strongly recommend that. That was one of my best decisions while being a part of Nightingale, was choosing to be a part of leadership. From the smallest officer to being as high up as I could possibly go without literally taking the throne from Briggs. I thoroughly enjoyed every single position that I moved into, and it was 100% worth it. And I strongly encourage anybody out there listening who's been listening for 2 hours and 49 minutes to take that.
Oh boy.
Yeah, take that leap of faith. And yeah, I think I will close us out there. Do you have any last thing or anything you want to say before we close out here?
I'm proud to take the crown of your longest episode yet. Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. Creating an organization, heck, joining an organization and committing to it for freaking 2 years is a lot of work. But I have made some great friends and have had honestly the best experiences I've ever had playing a video game ever while in this organization. And honestly, even if you're somebody who you really just you enjoy gaming solo, even if you're playing solo games, like I play Cyberpunk 2077 and join voice chats just because I want to hang out with people, right? Like it's worth it. It's a lot of effort, but it's worth it. And yeah, sorry if you're sick and tired of hearing my voice at the end of almost 3 hours.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I personally had a blast. I hope you did. And if there's a viewer out there that made it all the way to the end, let me know in the comments, because I'm curious how well this one does being this long.
Put it on the title that you need to listen at a time.
And I appreciate you coming out. Hopefully we get to do it again. I know we talked a little bit, maybe a little teaser for anyone who's still listening. There's a chance that to open up season 2, which will be starting in 2025, like January, February-ish. We might do an episode with the guest from last week, Deputy, Briggs, and then whoever is the leader of 12th, who I don't think I've met yet. Fuller, okay. So there's a chance we might do a little, like, an alliance episode where we kind of meet with 3 different org leaders who have kind of come together to make an alliance and kind of interview some of them. So if that does come to fruition, I look forward to talking with you more on the podcast then. And
I look forward to it. I'll hopefully talk less.
And yeah, I appreciate you coming on and taking 3 hours out of your night to come hang out with me. I enjoyed it, and yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. If you're out there, for all the listeners who are still here, I need a couple more subscribers to get to 50. And once we get to 50, I'll start recording these live on YouTube. So if you're able to, drop me a sub. I would much appreciate it. And we have some cool guests coming up. Our next guest, I don't think I can announce yet because I think he's waiting to make an announcement. So you should be hearing that soon. I'll need to touch base with him, but yeah, we have some really cool episodes lined up. The entire season is booked out, so we're looking at 6 more episodes closing out for the end of the year, and then we'll be starting season 2 soon. So appreciate everyone listening, and hope you guys all have a good rest of your night.